Hey there, hey there, hey there. Fine looking audience. I missed you. So here I am on a Wednesday, random Wednesday. Folks, I ran into a little Dern God's Grief syndrome. Little guy from the Monty Python sketch syndrome. Um, I tried to build the Ironborn video castle 4 times and it fell over and sank into the swamp of technical difficulties. That's right. I have tried 4 times to record the first Ironborn video, and it has been something different every time. And I just needed to sort of get the taste out of my mouth and put some energy somewhere. And so here I am. It has been a minute since we've done an open Q&A. I've put out some new ideas. There's been lots of questions in the comments lately, and I've actually clipped some comments. Some good, some bad, a couple ugly. I guess ugly and bad are the same thing, but my original idea, I have really gotten a couple of winners in the last couple weeks. And I was thinking maybe we'd have a bit of sport, obviously with the names removed because we're not trying to embarrass anyone or anything. But I was figuring I'd kick them around here and we'd have some sport with them. But looking for the few bad comments, if you will, that I remember from the past few weeks, I ran into so many good comments. It reminded me that, the ones that set me off sometimes are actually a very tiny percentage of the comments. There's many more great comments. There's plenty of complimentary ones just thanking me and all that stuff. But of course, there's many great contributions from you fans because you guys are smart. So we're going to do, basically, I've got some comments from recent videos to address or get into some discussions with. And then I will be taking them live from you guys here, of course, like every open Q&A. Ask me about your theories, whatever. And the other thing I will say is that if you would like to see your question or idea discussed, the way to do that is with the paypal.me link in the description below. Anytime we do an Ask Me, Q&A thing, it's a little bit of like the fundraising drive. I get more donations on those, and I usually do them when I've got a need coming up. Like I've been talking about lighting recently. You guys can see my lighting has gotten a little better, and it will be better still on the new video once I record it, because I'll be using my nicer camera and stuff. So I'm on the way to becoming, a real YouTuber here with studio lighting and stuff. So thank you very much, those of you who have donated recently. We're moving up in the world. Lighting turns out to be a whole can of worms. There's like frequencies that the lights are on, and you got to have all the lights be on the same frequency, and your camera's got to know what frequency that is. And then true synergy will be achieved. And I can get those skincare ads. Yeah, not just slanging cereal. And yeah, the chat's frozen. Thank you. Let's just fix that. There we go. Can you add photos to the PayPal link? I found some comics with heavy LML symbolism. You can put a link. You can, not a picture, but you could definitely put a link in the comment section. And yes, if you send a PayPal, ask your question in the comments field. I am monitoring them right now. For example, Addison sent me one already, aka Solid Earl. What's up, Mr. Lightbringer? Do you think it's possible that Mira Reed will slay Bloodraven with his own blade, Dark Sister, to avenge Jojen? Wow, I have never thought about that. That question does give me dopamine. It just feels good. It's literally a chemical that makes you feel good. That's dopamine. That's what we're selling here, really, dopamine. So this question gives me dopamine, Solid Earl. This would make sense, to be honest. We know Bloodraven is going to leave, stage right at some point. He is the Mr. Miyagi. He's not going to stick around forever. Bran's got to become the last Green Seer. But we've all been thinking about Bloodraven dying like, mystical ways, maybe the others or the whites, like on the show. But honestly, this would make sense because this is how George writes. It's like, yeah, Jojen, his life was used up in order to put Bran on his purpose. And Bloodraven was complicit in using Jojen and using Bran in order to save the world, which is a noble purpose, obviously. But the thing is, when you do stuff like that, there's always a personal price, too. Like, Mira is not okay with Jojen throwing his life away. We get that sense very strongly. So if Mira decides to exact that price on Bloodraven, be like, yeah, I understood why you did this, but you can understand why I have to do this. Boom. I can absolutely I can see that. I could see that. It'll be after Bloodraven does whatever final magical thing he needs to do, but that would make a lot of sense if the personal layer of the story comes back around and Bloodraven's got to pay the piper for all the using that he's done. Because Bloodraven, as much as I love him, he does use people for, higher purposes according to him, which takes a lot of hubris to do that. So that's the kind of thing that should come back around and have a cost. That makes a lot of sense. So I like this theory. Thank you, Solid Earl. What do you guys think about that? And we do think that Dark Sister is going to leave the cave. It does seem to be up there, according to George. He said that at least Bloodraven took it with him to the wall. So we would assume that he would take it on that ranging where he got lost, and thus it is probably in the cave. And really that's, from like a storytelling point of view, that's the kind of, interesting answer, right? I'm just making myself some tea, don't mind me. So we do expect it to come out. Somebody will use it. Mira does seem like a candidate to use it. She's not known to use a sword, but she is skilled in combat. So she could use it in a pinch. And ultimately, it could end up in the hands of Arya or even Jon for different reasons. But yeah, I really like that idea, actually. Mira slaying Bloodraven in recompense for Jojen. Because everything does have a cost. I really like that. From June, just a thank you. Well, you're welcome, June. It is my pleasure. All right, so you guys will have to tell me if you want me to get into the good or the bad comments first. There's only like 6 bad ones. And when I shouldn't say bad. They're challenging. They're challenging. They're challenging me. Trying to test me. Well, that's a little toasty still. Praise Garth, Mystery Knight, a member for 21 months, dude. That's hardcore. I appreciate that. Do you think Gendry finds a meteor and forges Lightbringer? Finds a meteor? No. Will Gendry reforge ice out of Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper? I could see that. Or doing other forging for the long night. I think the show kind of got that right. Everybody coming together, hoarding the dragon glass, collecting all the Valyrian steel. That seems very practical. I do think that will happen. Who do you think is the rumored death that George regrets and painted himself into the corner on? Anyone other than Kevin? So I have not put a lot of thought to this, Micah Fanes, and I clipped one of your comments actually for later. But just thinking about it, who is dead that George could want to use? I don't know about Kevin Lannister. I think mostly in terms of POVs. Like, why would he need a character alive? Because that character would have a window into a time and place that nobody else does. And now he's got to invent a character or bring a character over somewhere else or recap something third hand that he would like to show us. Now, I'm not sure who that would be, though. It's obviously not like Ned or Rob or something. Corin Halfhand is one I would wonder about. And it wouldn't be someone that's not necessarily confirmed dead. Like Illyrio might be dead, but we don't know that. There's that thing about somebody's rings being chopped off of his fingers because he was so fat. That could have been Illyrio's death. Stone snake. This is pretty open and shut. What's the case for stone snake? I was thinking of him too. Maybe Maester Aemon. Nah, Maester Aemon's death was really thought out and planned. That wasn't something he would change his mind about. The stable boy. Oh, the one that Gregor killed. I would guess that it might be like Corn or Stone Snake. Those would be the only POV in King's. Oh, Kevin Lannister. He's the only one in King's Landing besides Cersei. But the Sand Snakes are going to be in King's Landing soon. You could always give one of them a POV, and so is Fagon and Arianne. But that I could see Kevon. I could see that. What's up, Rai Rai? What's up, Lissa? Lysa. I guess it would be. No, with two S's, it would be Lissa. All right, so let's get into some of these good comments here. So first of all, Derek Hammond, Snowy Locks references Goldilocks, a story, and we talked about this. Remember, we said, "Oh, Snowy Locks sounds like a Goldilocks reference." But we couldn't figure out the. So check this out. Goldilocks is a story about a wolf that eats people, and porridge that's just right. Bran is the wolf, and Jojen is the porridge. Oh, it's right there. Just like we found Donner Stark in the list of the Kings of Winter. And of course, the Donner Party is a thing about cannibalism. Yeah. And what was the other name that was attached to the Donner Party? It's the Donner Reed Party sometimes, right? So you've got Lord Donner Stark and the Reeds. Yeah, that's terrible. Jojen Pace confirmed. It's the Goldilocks. Yeah, Jojen is the porridge. Bran is the wolf. Egads. Egads. But good work there, Derek. To add to the Lovecraftian parallels, the Yucatan Peninsula, where the meteor fell, this is really good, this is on the Moat Kalen video, is filled with cenotes, which are enormous cave systems, all supposedly connected, and filled with clear blue sweet water. They were sacred pools to the Mayans, that's true. All kinds of effigies and things and sacrifices have been found in them, and the Mayans worship gods of the underworld down there, it would seem. So of course, this is even, there's more in the comments too below this one, but like, there really is a lot of parallels with the first men, children of the forest, and the Americas. Not only like the coming of the Europeans paralleling the coming of the first men or the Andals, but also like think about all the obsidian and stuff. Like the culture that is most famous for using obsidian in a magical way is by far Mayans and other Mesoamerican cultures. I think it's widespread through most Mesoamerican cultures. Actually, no, please do clarify if you've got more specific information. But yeah, I think of the Aztecs and the Mayans, those are the two main ones. And they would use those obsidian mirrors for scrying, which is very similar to a glass candle, and pretty obviously where George got the glass candle idea from. So yeah, when you think about Native Americans with like obsidian blades living in the jungle, it's obviously a parallel to the Children of the Forest with all their obsidian weapons, living in the jungle, living closer to nature, things like that. So the idea that there's all these cave systems in the Yucatan, which are actually tied to the meteor impact. I forgot it is the meteor impact in the Yucatan that created the cenotes. It's just a nice, yeah. So the Olmecs, which is basically the oldest Mesoamerican culture, and even the word Olmec might be just a conglomerate for multiple cultures that are just so old we can't describe and delineate between. But yeah, if they're using obsidian masks and things, then it's pretty much going to be ubiquitous. And we see most Mesoamerican mythology is related. Like the Quetzalcoatl thing is everywhere. There's a version. There's Wiracocha and other versions of Quetzalcoatl in various regions by different names. So, yes, and so this is another reason why we should think of the Yucatan Peninsula and that dinosaur killer meteor when we think about the Hammer of the Waters and the First Men and all that stuff. Despite the dogged objections of the Doggerland crowd, which we'll get to. You dogged Doggerlanders, we'll get to you. Trust me. And yeah, those Squisher videos are coming. Praise Garth. It is 420. 420 somewhere, not here. It's way out on the. No, where is? Oh, East Coast 420. Yeah. Sorry, I had my time zones backwards in my head there. Praise Garth on the East Coast. Let's zoom in this one here. Love these streams and videos. It's interesting to me, the deeper I dive into these, how despite being a lifelong reader, that there is this shadow world living beneath a story. And this is from Andrew. I think my mind subconsciously has been picking up on it, even just reading the first line of this chapter, and that's the Forsaken. There's a poignancy to it that defies description. My mind revels in it as it does these streams. Does anybody have a book or video they could? Well, let me just stop there. So I really like this comment because it's picking up on something that I always try to stress about the symbolic layer of the story, which is that it works even if you don't dissect it like we do. Even if you just read the story and enjoy the prose and don't ever think about moon meteors or green men or what the blood moon symbol means or any of that, the fact that George has put all of that in there creates a certain type of feel in the story. And it comes through and it works on your subconscious even if you don't think about it. It's the reason why A Song of Ice and Fire feels the way it does, or one of the reasons. And A Song of Ice and Fire does have a very unique feel in its prose, its cadence, its themes, the fully realized feel of the world, the way it feels so epic and ancient and archetypal. Yes, so a lot of this, that's the fun part, is like there is a sort of treasure hunt aspect to like tracking down all this stuff, but it's not just a treasure hunt. That's not just why George put this stuff in there. He put it in there so that his story is constructed like an ancient myth. You know, I've said that he's writing modern mythology. That's what I mean. He's constructing his stories with this underlying archetypal layer. He's making his own mythology and then reflecting it in his prose. And that is very high level writing. And it's what, you know, classic stories and folk tales, that's how they would be composed. Sorry, I'll try to drink my tea away from the microphone for those people that don't like that. So, thank you, Andrew. And as far as books, you know, I pick it up a little bit from everywhere. There's no one book. I do kind of subscribe to the Joseph Campbell, you know, method of thinking about symbolism and mythology. But he's laid that out best, not in a book, but rather, I believe, in those PBS lectures, which is maybe a good place to start. But yeah, so let me keep going here. Unpopular opinion. I love this channel. I can listen all day at work, but it's a little hard to overlook his requests for specific things. So I wanted to bring this up, and this is not a hate comment or anything like that. I just wanted to address this. For people to pledge extra for his phone and his moving expenses, etc. I know he doesn't have a job. This is his income, but he reminds me of the preacher at my ex-wife's church with how he makes these requests. Not shit talk, just observing. Okay, so fair. And here's my thinking on this, all right? First of all, I did go to a lot of church, and I probably do sound like a preacher sometimes. Hopefully when I'm expounding the good word and not asking for money. But yes, this is my, you know, when you say I don't have a job, like this is my job. It's actually a business, and I'm incorporated. I pay taxes and stuff like that. So this is my job. But yes, I do have to ask for money. We all have to ask for money. We do it different ways. You saw I did the Magic Spoon ad. Specifically, the idea though with mentioning things like, oh, my phone broke or my computer broke that one time, and you guys came through for me. I was talking about the lighting. Some people like to hear what the money is going towards, basically. So don't think about it as I'm bumming for this or that, but rather telling people what the money is going towards. And then that way you can see like, oh, the lighting's improved. I sent in $20, when my computer broke, obviously everyone who donated money to that, which a few people threw down like a couple $100 on that. They had the satisfaction of knowing that, I got a new computer and made better videos and was able to work faster after that. So yeah, that's all it is. It's possible that on one of those streams I was completely broke and like maybe said PayPal too many times or something, but that's just part of the thing. Nobody loves asking for money. I'd rather just talk about symbolism. But yeah, it is a self-funded thing. So I do have to ask for donations and stuff, and it's part of the deal. I like money. Anyways, but of course, again, it is all free. So if you are, just enjoy the content occasionally or don't have the money to support or whatever, you got bills, that's fine. You can watch the videos for free too. So, Okay, so here's a good one from Martin, our buddy Martin Krog, always active in the chat. Oh, and actually, before I dive into this one about the Nissa stuff, I got 2 PayPals. So let me stay on top of those. From Wiley. The Stark children's wolves represent their respective power. More symbolism than something telling us where the story is going. So Jon and Robb, both wolves, are with them throughout the story as their powers grow. Jon's wolf starts as a runt. Robb only dies when his wolf is not allowed into the Red Wedding and is caged outside. Arya and Sansa both lose their wolf early in the story. Sansa's is killed and must build non-magical power through politics. Arya's wolf runs away and is dormant as Arya starts to build her power through following the Hound and the Faceless Men. She may reunite with Nymeria when she returns to Westeros as a dangerous warrior. And I will point out that she actually has maintained contact with Nymeria pretty much all the way. Like, even when she was fleeing Harrenhal, Nymeria and the Wolf Pack killed the people that were pursuing her, and Arya dreamed about it. So she's been in dream contact with Nymeria. But to the commenter's point, physically they haven't been together, and Arya has had to develop other skills. So that's true. Bran's building his warging power first through summer. Bran and Rickon's wolves are with them throughout the story as well. So Bran's building his warging power through summer, and Shaggy Dog is powerful but wild and untamed, while Rickon may become later in the story. Although I also did point out that we shouldn't think Rickon will be totally undisciplined, because he is under the care of Osha the Wildling, who has a stern hand at justice. Swift hand at justice, whatever it is. Jon's the old hand at justice. So, yeah, she smacks Rickon on the butt with the spear, and then he listens fast enough. From Nick. Do you think Jon's body will be possessed by someone? I have a feeling Bran will call out to the dead and bring Jon back, but someone else will go into Jon's body and pretend to be him. We won't find out until the end of the book. So no, I think the others will steal his corpse while his spirit is in Ghost, as I have said many times. But no, I don't think anybody else will get in Jon's body. I've seen theories about Bran or Bloodraven controlling Jon. I don't think that'll happen. Just because of agency and all that stuff. I think we need to continue to get Jon's POV too. So, yeah. From Casey, Mystery Night. Here, take my money. Okay, taken. Thank you. All right, so back to Martin's comment. Oh, there was 2 super chats that came by. From Juniper Jenny. This is a hustle economy. That's right. Give this money to strippers, says DM Collins. Actually, it's not a place that, no judgment, but I don't tend to go to those places. But I'll give my money to probably a bartender if I go see some dubstep tonight. Because I've tried to record 3 nights in a row, so I don't know if I could do it again tonight. I've been telling the same jokes for 3 days. You're going to know, too. All the jokes that you see on the Ironborn video, you're going to know. They're super canned. None of them are spontaneous. No, I'm kidding. I always do a little improvisation. But there was one joke that was like, I just had to stop in the middle of it. It's like, I can't do this. I've said it 4 times. It's not funny anymore. Anyway, the Ironborn video is going to be friggin' fire. I am really excited about the script. It's going to be awesome. And all 3 videos are going to be nuts. By the time I'm done with the last one about the deep ones, I'm going to feel good. Yeah, the deep ones thing, it's going to be nuts. Okay, so let's keep going. Martin says, I am pronouncing it very well with Nissa. The E on the end makes a sort of sound that's best represented in English by just making the ah sound. So plural form would be nisser. Nis would be incorrect. So there you go. Now the interesting part of this, Santa Claus, the Yule man, of course, would be the king of the Nissa, or the Nisser. A pine cone tree with mushrooms growing underneath would be the Yule tree. That's obviously some Odin Yggdrasil stuff going on there. So yeah, if you look at the picture, I showed it in the video of the Nis. You could tell they look like Christmas elves in some of them. And some of that has happened over time, apparently. They become more Christmas elf-like over time, but there's definitely a similar tradition. See, look at that little dude. That's a Nissa man. So they're usually male in folklore, but they are specifically tied to the Santa Claus folklore and mythology. So kind of fits with the idea of the children of the forest being like little elves, Nissa being a child of the forest, and then they're all serving Bloodraven, who is a kind of, Odin-like Santa Claus figure. So, sorry. Furthermore, in the folklore about the Nisser, the most important thing is the concept of guest right. Humans and Nisser have a pact that as long as humans bring the Nisser gifts and sacrifices, usually beer or cookies or porridge, but also sometimes misbehaving children, the Nisser will treat the humans kindly, bless their home, and protect them from the harsh elements. But if the pact is broken, the Nisser will sink their teeth into the flesh of the humans, turn their beasts loose on their crops to spoil their harvest, and kill their children. And he finishes by saying that Scandinavian children's stories are pretty intense. Thank you, Martin, for that. So, you can see the obvious implications here, right? As far as the children of the forest and the others, and the whole idea of violating nature, guest right being sacred. We've even talked about guest right applying to the Weirwoods and Azor High, breaking into it or whatever. So, yeah, that's cool. You can see the themes here. Even more tightly correlated with the idea of the Nis. So, calling Nissa, not only does it imply her as a child of the forest, but it also, ties into the themes of the children of the forest and the others, and the pact, and the first men. And that's how we know that, this is the connotation of Nissa that George intended. Absolutely. Bagri says he's got tons of questions whenever I'm doing a chapter reread, but now I can't think of one. Antis Tube, the horn that wakes the sleepers, could it wake the dreamers, aka the others, and the Stark Kings on their weirwood thrones? I So again, I don't think any statues are getting up and walking around. I do think that that horn that Sam and John found, I do think it calls the others. This is my thinking recently. So in that sense, it does kind of wake the sleepers. It could be something about resurrected Night's Watch too, as far as waking sleepers. But the Night's Watch say they themselves are the horn that wakes the sleepers. And if the sleepers are the others, then what the hell does that mean? The others, the Night's Watch wake up the others? I'm really not sure. The horn that wakes the sleepers, it's really ambiguous. It really could mean so many things. Oh, we've got a couple more PayPals coming in. From Daniel. Love the videos. Keep on it. Small idea. You don't have to read it if it doesn't make sense. Okay, so he's making a comparison between the Doom of Valyria, where the Valyrian mages tamed the 14 flames to gain their magic. What if something similar happened with the Long Night and the green men who became the others? Were they trying to cause a long night in order to harness ice magic? I don't think so, because again, it seems like the moon meteors are the cause of the long night, and that seems to be the Azor High stuff. The others really do seem like an unintended consequence, in my opinion. But I do think that all the different elements can be tapped into magically. And I do think like Night's Queen is basically just an ice sorceress who's tapped into ice magic on her own. But I'll read the rest of this, Daniel, off the air. Charles says, all the Dune, hive mind, psychedelic future past sight makes me think the wyverns and fireworms mentioned in the World of Ice and Fire may have a purpose in the story to do with Bran, aka the sandworms, maybe escaping the cave. I don't think so. I think these are separate ideas. Obviously Bran draws a lot from God Emperors and stuff from Dune. But I don't think Bran will necessarily have sandworms in his plot. What he has is the weirwood roots, which are like grave worms. So if George wants to keep constructing that image, it's like in Dune, the navigators become worms over time. In Ice and Fire, the green seers are gradually covered and merged with worms, but they're the roots of the weirwood trees. So that would be the parallel. Then over on the other side, the idea that human spirits can be stuffed into dragons is also kind of like Dune, where you have, again, the God Emperors becoming worms. Well, here some of the Valyrian ancestors might be becoming dragons. From Gamer Pals, we know George does clever things with language when Cold Hands tells Bran, I'm your monster, Brandon Stark. Could he be telling Bran his name rather than addressing Bran as Brandon? Cold Hands is an ancient Brandon. Well, he is addressing Bran, but could there be an implied double meaning? Yes, absolutely. And if Cold Hands is the last hero or one of the last hero's crew, then he could be Bran Stark, absolutely. One of these days we got to figure out the difference between like the last hero and Bran the Builder and all these different people, but it's just, we'll just be guessing if we did that. So I think the end of the current story will give us the best clues as opposed to like what the original roles were exactly. From Brandon, I can't figure out how to add an attachment. Please look up the cover for Ascender issue 18. It's clearly Weirwood inspired. Well, I will. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't know what Ascender is, but that's pretty dope. Yeah, it's like a white tree with blood and fire in the canopy there and someone's face. That's definitely pretty dope artwork. Oh, let's see here. There we go. Okay, so next YouTube comment. And this was a super thanks, so super thank you for that. Let's see here. Azor Ahai, this is from Arendelle, 5884. Azor Ahai Bloodstone invading the Weirwood Net could be the classic trope of a powerful mortal leader attempting to claim immortality for themselves, and I would absolutely say that it is, given the children in the Weirwoods have a form of immortality, and then unintentionally achieving it, but in the form of undeath. And yes, this I would again agree with that. This chapter would this character would have much in common with Arthas Menethil, who I don't know who that is, or Ar-Pharazôn, which we've talked about a lot from the Silmarillion, the end of Numenor. Particularly the latter, with the Hammer of the Waters being kicked off, similar to the sinking of Numenor. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels with that, with the Great Empire of the Dawn and the end of Numenor. Should note that both were first considered great heroes and strong leaders before their fall, adding to the question of Azor Ahai, is he hero or villain? Probably both at different points. Yeah, and then there's also the question of like, Azor Ahai's son or brother or multiple characters that fit the archetype but play different roles. Let me try to make this, bigger. There we go. Let's see, I think there is some playing around with language when it comes to the Night's King and the 13th man to lead the watch, says Josh Kellerman. This isn't 13th leader, it's 13th inductee, and the first leader of the watch allows the last hero, Azor Ahai, to be him. I'm not sure I understand the point here. Because when he said to lead the watch, I don't see how that would just be an inductee. Which is where I got the idea of there being a previous order. And that's where most people have gone. But feel free to clarify, Josh. I feel like I'm not quite getting your point. In Dany's vision and the Undying, they are all in threes. And all end in love. Does that mean something? Cheryl, I'd have to go back and look at all that, three fires will you light stuff. All that stuff's really hard to decode, but I like the angle you've taken on it. Like Dany is doing these things for love. Not that necessarily means that it's going to be a good thing, but in general, I think it does imply that. George is trying to encourage his characters to come to terms with their humanity, not to deny their humanity. So, yeah, that could be significant and hopeful. Arthas Menethil is a main character from Warcraft 3, but he's kind of Elric of Melniboné and other fantasy guys. That's cool. Have I done any Silmarillion walkthroughs? No, I haven't. I was thinking about doing that when House of the Dragon came out and sort of took up all my time. So let's see here. All right. Oh, this is a great one. From Nate Davis. Grave worms sound like Grey Worm. Remember we were talking about the Weirwood roots as grave worms. With grave worms representing how Dany will free Death and the others, just as she freed Grey Worm and the Unsullied, another persecuted group of mutilated warriors. So this is awesome. It really is, because it's like, remember I've been saying Dany's destiny in part will be to burn the others in order to free the whites, just as she burns slave masters to free the unsullied and other slaves. So then I've said that the way that she'll do that is going to be some sort of her giving herself to the Weirwood net or going inside the Weirwood net on death or something like that. So it's like, yeah, the people that her freed slaves that symbolize the whites she's going to free, one of them is called Grey Worm. So it's like, yeah, that totally makes sense. That's a really good call. And more evidence that Dany's end will have to do with, again, liberating people and with the Weirwood net, going into the Weirwood net. Yeah, super good. Ah, 10 Bunks 12 asking about the first long night and the second long night. I have a YouTube comment in the bad list that we'll get to that one. We should get to some of the bad list comments soon. Maybe I'll take one more hit so that I'm in a good mood and don't come off too cranky. But thanks, Nate Davis. That's awesome. I love that Grey Worm catch. Mike Fahrenheit, excellent video as always. Love your work. What if there isn't a sacred order of green men, and it's really just a story about the creation of the Night's Watch that got confused? This is something I considered and think could be possible. There really isn't a difference between the sacred order of green men and the sacred order of the Night's Watch that also watch over Weirwoods. Like, this could all be the same story. And the idea that everything was on the Isle of Faces, that might not be true either. I do think there are Weirwoods on the Isle of Faces, and it does seem important and all that, but was the pact signed there? I don't know. Was the blood magic there that called down the moon meteors? Was Nissa Nissa killed there? Maybe. But the Isle of Faces also looks like a crater lake, which means it wouldn't have even have existed until after the long night. So Nissa Nissa couldn't have been killed there. Hard to say. And it probably doesn't matter. But yes, the whole idea of the sacred order of green men being formed after the pact could just be a weird story about the Night's Watch, and there actually isn't a separate sacred order. What I think is that there are multiple green men orders originally. And I even think the role the maesters play with the lords was preceded by green men, and that green men were sort of liaisons to some of the early lords. I think that would make sense. Bring on the bad list, Ollie Bow says. I'm almost through. I've got 2 separate good lists. I'm almost done with this one, so let me keep going. Given that George Martin's Westeros is semi-based on Great Britain and Essos on Europe, I'm afraid it is... Oh, okay, you know what? That was supposed to be on the bad list, and it is on the bad list, but the one on the bad list has the name blocked out. So let me skip that one for now. I'll come back to that later. We'll talk about Doggerland, like I said. This is from Kitezak Pwong. I see Bran, and the point is valid. It's just a little trolly, the message. So let's see. I see Bran as partial analog to Cole from 12 Monkeys, which I love that movie. Cole is also a time traveler with a nearly supernatural memory. I believe Bran will witness his own death, just like Cole did, spoiler alert, likely from the perspective of the Weirwoods. That's something I haven't thought about. Bran witnessing his own death. That would be a trip. Let's see, I believe another apparent theme is that the past is already written. So recall that Cole returns to the past many times without improving the world's situation. One cannot fix the past, and humanity will have to start anew. The catastrophe will be unavoidable. So I agree with the commentary here thematically as well as the comparison. I don't know if that's something George had in mind, but it's a good literary comparison, certainly. So the next comment is even better. He adds that in a quote from an essay about La Jetée, which is what 12 Monkeys is a loose adaptation of. So let's see. What the protagonist finds is that the past is never as simple as we wish it to be. To return to it is to realize that we never understood it. He also finds, and here it is impossible to miss Marker's message for his viewers, a person cannot escape from their own time anyway. Try as we might to lose ourselves, we will always be dragged back into the world, into the here and now. Ultimately, there is no escape from the present. So I like this because even for Bran and Bloodraven, who are surfing the river of time, they have to be concerned with what's going on right now. And somebody's going to break into that cave and kill Bloodraven. It might be the others. It might be Mira. You know, it's like Bloodraven's never concerned about who he has to use. He's thinking about these long-range goals. But reality will eventually intrude. So I really like the way that was worded. It's poignant. And yeah, well, the point is you can't fix the past, Charlie. We know there's going to be some sort of hodering thing. And so it's like, yeah, Bran's little bit of trying to mess with the past is going to cause somebody to like go crazy or something. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, you can't go back and undo things ultimately. And we should also mention, of course, my favorite TV show ever, Dark, which is all about time travel and regret and coming to terms with the past and all that stuff. So, tremendous. The definition of stark. There is an archaic use of the word, which means stiff, rigid, or incapable of movement. Like a statue. So, very cool. The name Stark is actually sort of complementary to those Stark statues down there. And it just shows you the statues are emblematic of the Starks. They are statue-like. They're cold and humorless. They're stiff. Not very flexible. You know, these are all things that we would use to describe Ned, right? So the sample sentence they give is a human body lying stiff and stark by the stream. Which is funny because that sounds like Lady Stoneheart and her stiff, stark corpse in the stream. But of course, yeah, it also sounds like the statues as well. So the name Stark is well chosen. It also has the word star in it. Not sure if that means anything. Dawn is the original ice. The sacrifice by Snowy Locks at Winterfell, where Bran tastes the man's blood, should make Bran consider that very possibly the stuff he ate from the bowl to wet his tree was his pal Jojen, who was being brave not long before. So yeah, I hadn't thought about this, but Bran figuring out that he's eaten Jojen could cause a bit of a crisis for Bran. Just a little bit. And I'm not sure how he would figure that out, except for, yeah, watching all the blood sacrifice in the Weirwood visions. That might be how he figures that out. Rahul Kaushal, let's see. No. Yeah, Rahul Kaushal. Brilliant video as usual. I think you've said it before. Azor Ahai is an evil figure. Knowing this, do you have a theory who could be the new evil figure? And yes, apart from, well, Euron is the main answer. Euron is everything you could want out of a dark Azor Ahai Bloodstone Emperor parallel. He's sailing from Valyria with dragon armor and dragon accoutrement. So he's posing as a dragon lord from Ashai. He's a kind of dark sorcerer. He might be like a failed Green Seer apprentice. And then he's sailing to the Ironborn, to the Iron Islands, just like the Grey King did. So yeah, and he's talking about the Bleeding Star bespoke the end and how he's going to become a new god and all this stuff. So yeah, it's definitely Euron. But also Dany and Jon have shades of it too. Like Jon's body will be stolen by the others. He might even lead the invasion of Westeros. And Dany will be looked at as the invading figure. She might set off King's Landing wildfire when she tries to take it and be looked at and blamed for that. So I do think there are echoes of all of them, their potential to do evil, but it's mainly Euron is the answer. Okay, so there was a super chat a minute ago. Thanks, Karsnark. What's my overall A Song of Ice and Fire endgame theory summed up in a few sentences? It's all about reconciliation. It's the biggest theme of the story. So, the others have to get their tree home back, which means the Green Seer hive mind has to be pulled out of the tree. It's going to go in Bran's brain. And Jon and Dany are going to help lead the other spirits back into the Weirwood Net and free the Whites from bondage. So the three of them are going to work to fix the magical problem at the heart of the story, which will be all about reconciliation. And then we'll see that reconciliation theme sort of echoed out in various permutations in everybody's plot lines. But check out the Winds of Winter prediction playlist. Natty says, praise Garth and may R'hllor keep your lighter true. I think George won't fade magic away as a resolution to his story. It will be too generic. In A Song of Ice and Fire, magic is nature, and when man abuses it, they get natural disasters. I do think that there will be a no magic ending, or a maybe magic might come back again, but it's gone, because it's already on the way out. So this really does feel like the last gasp. I don't think it's too generic or too done. George he loves tropes. He does all the tropes. He just does them in his own way. So, yeah, I do think there won't be others or dragons at the end of the story, but I could be wrong. And once again, if you're joining late, best way to support the program is with the PayPal link in the description below, down there somewhere. And you can attach your question or comment in the comments field of the PayPal. And you can also use a super chat. Okay, so let's keep going. The sack of Winterfell is what Catelyn used to call Ned. Ba-boom. From I Wear Pants 123. I had to share that with you guys. That's tasty. The sack of Winterfell. Bran appears as a tree to Arya as well in a wolf dream in the Winds of Winter sample chapter. I forgot about that. So more evidence that Bran will increasingly come to rally the Stark children together. Dig it. I dig it. From John Hegg Evaldson. The dark place was pulling at him by then, the house of whispers where all men were blind. He could feel its cool fingers on him. The stony smell was a whisper up his nose. Wow, the whisper in the darkness. Nyarlathotep. Yeah, him. The house of whispers sounds like the house of the undying. And yeah, Tim was talking about this. But just that language of the house of whispers, it's directly pulled from Lovecraft there. So it just adds a creepy, mystical layer to the Green Seer magic. It's dark stuff, Do I think Dany's dragons will lay a clutch of eggs? And if so, which dragon? I'd think Viserion. I'd go with Rhaegal because I think Viserion will be stolen. But there could be other eggs around anyway. So they might not have to lay any eggs for there to be eggs. This content was A+ as always, but the sponsor plug was the best I've ever seen. A lot of people, you guys, complimented my ad delivery, and I really appreciate that. Obviously, again, nobody likes asking for money. You start doing ads on your channel, you're nervous about it. I'm gonna try to make them all funny and stuff. Hopefully not quite as long, but that was the first one. Anyway, it was a big deal. It is a big deal to get sponsored, and so I just appreciate all the support. You guys watching the ad, ordering cereal. And what's the other thing? Yeah, I got my lighting better, Minty. That's why I look better today. Thanks to the viewers out there. And what was I saying? Yeah, I appreciate all the compliments on the ad. Like I said, I appreciate you guys watching them, and I'll try to make them funny. It's just the best way to do it. So I've actually been looking forward to doing ads for a while, just because it gives me the chance to do skits. Because you guys remember, I did the whole Bernard Stark skit in the White Walker video. I think I spent like 5 minutes on it. It was way too long. I love doing those. So, yeah. Appreciate the compliments on that. Geez, that Bolton theory was amazing. It was, wasn't it? I might do that. This Sunday I'm going to do some sort of presentation stream. I was thinking about doing a write-up and presentation of the Bolton theory. But yeah, it is really fascinating. Check out the House Stark Theory Iceberg Part 2 for that. But Bernie Stark was epic, Minty says. I appreciate that. Him and Old Nan got into discussing different kinds of constitutional monarchies and stuff. I mean, come on. What more do you want? Are you not entertained? Honestly, I feel a little bad about putting your content on to go to sleep because I feel like I'm not really watching or absorbing your content, but I still do appreciate it tremendously. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. We appreciate your views and your extra long watch time. That's very good for the stats. And once one video is over, it's just going to play another. Bless you. Bless you, my son. That's all I have to say. My child. Sorry, didn't mean to gender. We don't know. With the names, who's who, but yes, thank you. Bless you, my child. And there's more comments like that about listening as they go to sleep and stuff like that. Hey, man. If it works for you, works for me. So thanks. This is a great one. So this is on the Ashai Atlantis. We talked about Atlantis, the Atlantis myth that Plato writes, supposedly was given to Solon, the famous Greek of Solon's laws, the lawgiver Solon. But when he went to the Egyptian priest, they told him like, oh, you Greeks are but children. You don't know jack, right? So the comment here, Egyptian priest, you know nothing, John Solon. That's a deep joke. That's a deep cut. Motorcycle manga babe. But that was awesome. Love that. Love that. I was in the replay crew and I was like, damn, oh yeah, the ads. Yes. So the adpocalypse, if you tried to watch the last brand stream the day after, there was like 1 million ads. And that's because I forgot to manually place them. For whatever reason, YouTube, when they place them, they put them like every 2 minutes. It's really weird. Again, the AI future, not all it's cracked up to be. Possibly we don't want to turn everything over to lines of code when they can't do basic shit right, like autocorrect. Call me, like, I'll be on board with the AI future when you can show me an autocorrect that works well. How about that? That's my deal for you tech worshipers. Yeah, and shout out to Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters, Visayanya and Rhaenys, such as witnessed on the recent Indeep Geek video. You guys know I respect Indeep Geek and a lot of his past theories and work, but apparently he has gone the way of AI. His last few videos seem to have most or all AI art instead of fan art. And I know History of Westeros is collaborating and writing some or all of his scripts now. So, and again, I'm just not to throw mud balls at anyone, but like, this is why I'm talking about AI art in our space and saying that this is an issue that we should care about, because some channels are going to do this. Not only are they going to stop using fan art and they're going to use AI art instead, either that they generated or that they just found somewhere, which is what it looks like with Aegon the Conqueror. You can see it for yourself. This is space that fan art formerly and should occupy that is now being occupied by AI art. Just like on the wiki at westeros.org, where they're putting AI art images under characters that don't have art yet, or for which there is art, but it's obscure and they haven't gone and found it. Okay, so you guys have choices. This is just my opinion, but I really think that we should resist AI images across the board, not mess with them at all, really, because I mean, it's going to take up the space where fan art exists, and it's that simple. So, not a fan of that. I hope that Indeep Geek reconsiders that and reverses that at some point, because I know you guys you guys really do appreciate seeing the fan art. I get a lot of messages about how much you appreciate that. So it's a curious decision, and I don't agree with it, and I think it's wrong. So I will respectfully say that, and hope that he changes. It is. It's disappointing. That's the word I would use. Because he does good work, and I've referred to many of his theories and essays here on the channel many times, and we used to work together. DM Collins says, if Martin dies too soon, do you think he'll have appointed a collaborator or two to complete the books? He said that he will not. He has said that if he doesn't finish, then that's that. So wish him good health and leave it at that. That's kind of where I go with it. No, I don't. I don't think it's flaming in Deep Geek. I think it's valid to give my opinion on it. I mean, it's kind of a seismic decision to choose to use AI art in the videos, and we've been talking about it lately. So I think my tone is appropriate, and I think it's appropriate to mention it. Yeah, I don't think I'm flaming anybody. So I just feel strongly about art, and I think I think now is the time when we have a chance to sort of reject AI art. And this is the thing, like, its place in society is not set and determined. If people we live in capitalism. If people don't use it, it will go away. If not enough people use it, it will go away. Like, it costs money to make all these AI algorithms and all this chat GPT stuff. In fact, I've already seen news articles about how a lot of it's getting rolled back because it's losing money. You know, like anything else, they throw a bunch of new money at stuff and they get too excited about it. And then it's like, oh, yeah, okay. You know, not all that's, cut out to be. So, okay. You were saying you meant people in the chat don't go to Indie Geek and Flame. Yeah, okay. Okay, right on, Lunk. So Lonk the Lunk is saying, yeah, let's not start angry comments on Indie Geek's channel train. Obviously, I hope that all of my fans represent me in a similar way that, actually, no. Hopefully you guys are better than me. Oh, I have sinned. That's why I try to stay off Twitter. You know what I'm saying, though. If you are a watcher of Indie Geek and a fan of Indie Geek, as I am, and you feel the need to make a comment, please be respectful, as I have tried to be. That is what I will say. But yes, it is an important issue. I do think that we should be talking about it and figuring out where we stand on it. And look, guys, there are whole YouTube channels now making videos that are written by AI. Like, if I wanted to, I could work with ChatGPT and get it to write me a script about a topic of Ice and Fire about which all the information is out there. I could even tell it to write it in the style of Joe Rogan and try to get that going. Like, if that's what you want, watch those videos. So I'm just saying, like, the AI thing can really go far. And we don't want to see that. We don't want to see AI images. We don't want AI scripts. At least I don't. So let's move along, though. Yeah, there are some ethical issues. Yes, there are. Yes, there are. So let's see here. Cameron with a generous PayPal. Thank you, Cameron. Haven't been able to catch a stream live in a while, but I've been listening to read-alongs while I try to survive tax season. So I'm long overdue. Oh, just a contribution and a thank you. Oh, you're welcome, Cameron. And thank you. From Ollie. Let's see. A thought occurred to me whilst explaining the Jon Snow resurrection to my partner. She's not been fully introduced to all things mythical astronomy yet. Hey, appreciate you. Hope that is working out to bring that up with your partner. Let's see. From both a purely mechanical and a thematic perspective, all three forms of resurrection we see in the books, Ice, Fire, and Living On in the Weirwood Net, are imperfect. The weaknesses of each form of resurrection are counteracted in various ways by the other two. So it'd be very fitting if Jon were to receive all three, combining them for something more perfect. Yeah, so we've definitely speculated along these lines. Let's see. Show us the whole shirt. Oh, I did earlier, but I will again. Dopamine just feels good. It says a chemical released in the brain that makes you feel good. It's just celebrating dopamine. That's all it is. I'm an ADHD guy, so I kind of live at the mercy of dopamine to some extent. So I thought it was a nice shirt to wear. But yes, Jon's resurrection, I mean, all the ingredients are there. I've said the foreshadowing for his body being stolen by the others is heavy and thick. So there's an ice component to his corpse. Melisandre is hot to trot to make a shadow baby with Jon, or to resurrect him, or to do something with R'hllor and Shadows and Jon. And then, of course, Bran and Bloodraven are there. So easily we could see all three components combining in Jon's resurrection. And we have to think of Jon's Azor Ahai dream, where he's armored in black ice but with a burning red sword. That could be a cold, whited body, but with an inner R'hllor fire. And wouldn't, Jon potentially does have the blood of the dragon, the blood of Green Seers, and the blood of the other in his bloodline. So he already is RGB man. Red, green, blue, like the trident. So I could see, yeah. I'd almost think it's more likely that there will be more than one magic involved in his resurrection. And specifically, weirwood magic is the thing that's going to make him a better zombie, I think. Both the idea that his spirit is preserved in ghost, and the idea that Green Seers might be able to restore life to the corpse and reanimate it, truly. Do I think Bran will steal Rickon's body? God, no. No, Connor. But I'm like a little Pollyanna. I like all the characters. I think everyone's heroic. Dany's going to be a hero, and Bran's a good little boy, and Bloodraven's just trying his best. I give everybody way too much benefit of the doubt. Some of these people are going to do bad things that are going to disappoint us. So, we'll see. Ted Lewis, thank you. Nymeria Sand. Show us the whole shirt. Okay, I did that. Very good. Yeah, so Jon, yes, I do think three-way resurrection is possible. The opening scene needs some James Taylor, says David Milburn of The Mystery Night. I believe that's the one where they're looking at the crow cages. But every opening scene needs some James Taylor, so that's why I shared that one. I sometimes wonder if you're secretly one of George's many assistants. If I was, I wouldn't be allowed to have this YouTube channel. That's for sure. But I appreciate the compliment. Oh, that reminds me, there was a comment that was too recent and I didn't clip it. But it was fantastic. And I want to read it. Oh, and shout out to Craig and Ford, who left me a comment on my post. Love his channel. Let's see here. First of all, somebody was asking why I take so many bong hits during the streams, and they said, it's not cocaine. Why does he keep hitting the bong? Just thought that was funny. Let's see here. I haven't even hit it once during this stream. Well, that's the thing about dabbing, is it lasts longer. I've gotten into that lately. Imagine writing a book in the 90s, then having some stoner in 2023 figuring out your whole narrative through symbolism. And that's from 666 The Beast 4. I thought that was sweet. That is my... Because he wrote it in the 90s when the internet was totally different. Everything was different then. It's funny. All right. Let's see here. Someone mentioned, I'm having the most challenging week of my life so far. And this is from AlWill5279. So a couple extra ads was completely unnoticed. I just love you for making all the content, LML, and wish you the very best. And then look at our myth head community, Jenny of Old Stones. Hope you're okay. I agree that David's content is excellent and a real inspiration. And guys, if you ever need a lift, just leave a comment in the comments field or come to the live stream. The Myth family, nothing but solid gold here, man. We care for each other. So love that. Love to see that, Jenny. Thank you. And we do wish you the best, Alwell. We do all have those weeks sometimes. Everybody knows how that is. And of course, I'm always happy if any of my content helps anybody get through a chore or a long drive or a hard week from hell. And by the way, anytime people comment on my jokes, you know that I love that, right? My kids are sudden and catastrophic. Thank you. That's honestly the number one type of comment. People appreciating my jokes. There's nothing better. Appreciate that. We're being made to recognize the skin changing of Hodor as a violation akin to rape. The parallels between Bran and Ramsay are all there if you look. This is true. And this gets to what we've talked about the Lord's right, the right of the first night, and how it probably comes from Greenseer kings trying to spread their seed as far as possible to try to have a magic baby for the next generation. This could have even been something the clan participated in willingly, because the clan needs a skin changer leader to make the clan strong. So it could have even been consensual in some cases. But the whole point is that they're trying to take the wizard with the magic bloodline and give them as many chances as possible to have a magic baby. And that may have been what led to this awful, awful practice of the first night. So yeah, it makes sense that any skin changer or greenseer, like Ramsay and the Boltons, they're kind of like a symbolic parallel to the Greenseers and Skin Changers that's showing you the worst, most predatory form, like Varamir. That's the point of people like Varamir in the plot, is to show you that Bran and Jon, they can do evil with their magic. They can take the wrong turn and become monsters. So, great question. How come all the Stark kids are wargs? Isn't it supposed to be rare? So, I think there's a little bit of misinformation about how rare it is. I think actually it's less rare than we think. I think what happens is that it has to be activated. So there's two reasons why all the Stark kids might have had their latent warg powers activated. One, the Red Comet. Even though the Red Comet doesn't come until the end of Game of Thrones, that's really only like a few months after they find the wolves. So it was already coming before you could see it. So the comet very obviously might be amplifying magic. It's tied to the dragons waking. There's a lot of clues about that. Lovecraftian comets are magic. So that could be the explanation. Like, this generation of Starks got the boost, right? But honestly, I think Lyanna and Brandon and Ned could have been wargs too. And that's probably why Lyanna and Brandon were such good horse riders. They're probably a little bit of warg power activating, a little bit of latent warg power, potentially skin changer power anyway. So yeah, I think it's the dire wolves that activated the gift. Now, it is likely that those wolves, how did they get there? Well, probably Bloodraven. Like, how did a pregnant direwolf mama get south of the wall? Probably Bloodraven skin changed it. So that's your answer to that question. So Bloodraven, in a sense, did sort of like, it didn't just happen that all 6 Stark kids ended up wargs. Like, nah, a Greenseer sent them a pregnant direwolf that had exactly the right amount of babies. It's a book. Not everything. You can only go so far into the machinery of it, right? I really love the idea of George sort of struggling to convey some of the more mystical, magical, prophetic ideas organically, and then just going, fuck it, I'm writing a Mel POV. I do kind of love that, because it's like there's only one. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, so we're going to get Melisandre's POV after all this time. Obviously, it's George needing to reveal stuff, and there's a lot revealed in that Mel chapter, which we reread, and you can find in our playlist of rereads. So, yeah. Did my super chat get lost, Jimmy? It might have. Let's see if I can find it. There's a few that came. Oh, I missed a couple. Let's see. Theory, the black stones are carbonado diamond. During an eclipse, they get charged with radiation and glow. Ashai is toxic because of mercury deposits. I don't know what the carbonado diamond is about. I don't think all the black stone is diamond, though. During an eclipse, they get charged with radiation and glow. Toxic because of mercury deposits. I mean, no, it's toxic because of magic. You know, it's not going to be a totally physical answer. Like, magic meteorites poisoned the rock or something. Or the fire moon getting destroyed tainted all the fire magic or something more like that. Let's go back here. No, got that one. Ted Lewis, Nymeria. You may have to repeat your question. Oh, here it is. Love the Great Empire of the Dawn theory, and some houses like Dane are refugees, exiled dragon lords. After watching House of the Dragon, I think the High Towers are ancient dragon slayers rather than ancient dragon riders. Well, they definitely are ancient dragon slayers. They may be both. They are definitely dragon slayers. It is said that the first High Tower put the dragons to death that were roosting on the walls of the Fewstone Fortress. Now, the Fewstone Fortress proves that dragon lords were there, building a fortress. But then we have High Towers, who also come from the Great Empire of the Dawn, but they are slaying dragons. And the High Tower's historic role is very much as a defender of Westeros. And the Danes are mostly tied with this last hero symbolism. So, and of course, bringing the day and stuff. So I call them Amethyst Empress loyalists, Jimmy. And I get into this in the second Great Empire of the Dawn video called Westeros. But basically, yeah, it's if you have an evil guy taking over the Great Empire of the Dawn and usurping the Amethyst Empress, well, what happens to the people that are loyal to truth and justice, let alone the Amethyst Empress? Well, some of them would oppose the Bloodstone Emperor. And so that would be, your Danes and your High Towers. So they would be descended of dragon lords, but potentially ones that turned against the Bloodstone Emperor. So maybe they had dragons themselves. Maybe they did not. Maybe they had other magic. Maybe Dawn is a dragon killer sword. I do think Dawn, by the way, could be a dragon killer sword. I think that's very possible. Galadon of Morn slew a dragon. Galadon of Morn. Dawn, sort of the morning. And we'll talk about Galahad too in a minute. Carbonado diamonds are black diamonds from space that glow under UV light. Yeah, I just don't think there's too much black stone for it to be that. Just as like there's too much black stone for it all to be meteorite. That's too much meteor. You don't get that much meteorite that makes its way to the surface to build an entire city out of it. So it's got to be something like the meteor is magic, because the entire peninsula of Ashai is toxic. It's all poisoned. There's a shadow that hangs over it. The plants don't grow. Kids and animals don't live there. All the stone is oily black. So it seems like a magical poisoning has happened here. Why did George say Mel was the most misunderstood character? Oh, just because she's not, people think she's a psychotic monster and she's just trying to do her best to interpret prophecy. Like, this is the same thing with Rhaegar. It's like, yeah, in the real world, somebody using prophecy as an excuse to convince a 15-year-old girl to run off with them is a creepo. But in a world where the prophecy is real and magic is real, it's a little different. Like Rhaegar and Lyanna made Jon, and Jon really is the prince that was promised, or one of them. So Melisandre's misunderstood in that, like, she is really searching for Azor Ahai. That's what she's trying to do. And that is important. Oh, a Lang question. I was thinking about doing a Lang stream this Sunday. That was my other idea. Langi have All features of humans, children of the forest, and giants also are close to 5/4. Are they precursors to all races? So yes, Ted, I entertained this at the end of the Great Empire of the Dawn stream, that perhaps humans were created. That humans aren't natural. Humans were created from green men and giants and children of the forest and hairy men, or some combination. That could be the case. It's hard to know. Recently, and I want to ask Tim about this, I want to ask about the idea of the old ones being ancient mariners. Because in Lovecraft, the people who worship the old ones, who are the horny goat people that live on Lang, they sail ships to the moon and back. They are merchants and slavers, and they sail ships, and they are travelers and merchants. So the idea that the old ones, because remember, the whole point of the Lang theory is that the old ones on Lang are the same as the green men. So did green men just both used to be everywhere? There's only 2 pockets of them left on Lang and the Isle of Faces, maybe. But maybe the old ones came from Lang to Westeros. And that's part of the whole Great Empire of the Dawn migration. But I need to talk to Greyways Tim about this stuff, about Lang, and get deeper into it. Okay, so I think it depends on how much oily black stone the deep ones brought with them. Was that part of what their spaceships were made from? There's no spaceships. There really is too much, though. It's got to be created on Earth. There's too. I mean, Ashai is bigger than all the 4 biggest cities in the world put together. It's so much black stone. And then there's Yin as well. So it can't all be space rock. Created by space rock, yes. The space rock breeds when it gets to Earth. So yeah, we're going to talk more about Lang soon. And there's a PayPal from Cameron. I'm perusing the world of Ice and Fire. Talk of the RGB Trident. Oh, while he listens, cool. Talk of the RGB Trident and the 3 resurrections has me thinking about Rhaegar and Robert on the Trident. If Rhaegar as a Dragon Lord stands for Azor Ahai and Robert is a Horned Green Man, we have our Hammer of the Waters, Rhaegar's rubies, being, moon meteors falling into the sea. But why are we contextually rooting for Rhaegar? Obviously, Robert was a bad king and Aerys was terrible, so why would George want us to root for an Azor Ahai stand-in? Well, because the archetype has to be flexible. If George copied the archetypal story exactly every time with the same roles, it would be overly wooden and stiff. This is why I think this is what makes it interesting, is that we see all the various permutations. Like we've seen some Nissa Nissas that look less like victims and look more like they're pulling the strings, like Melisandre, and entrapping people and tricking people. We've seen Azor Ahais that look more heroic, or at least understandable. So I think it's part of George creating uncertainty about the original events and getting us to wonder, just like with Fire and Blood, where he gives us multiple potential things that could have happened and didn't necessarily choose himself which one is true. He's giving us multiple echoes of these archetypal stories that work different ways, so that we can sort of, choose between them what we think might have happened, and also so that when he's creating these parallels in the story, they're not all the same. Sometimes somebody needs to be the hero and someone not the hero. There's also a cycle, though, with the Summer and Winter King. They kill each other and turn into each other. Like Renly's a green man, but then resurrected Renly at King's Landing, which is Garland Tyrell wearing Renly's armor. He looks all fiery. He's leading an army of demons from hell, and his armor's running with fire, and his antlers are running with fire. So now he looks like a hellish Azor Ahai figure. And remember, we're talking about Night's King originally having been from the Green Man Watch. Night's King is Azor Ahai, though. So sometimes Azor Ahai looks like a naughty green man. And remember, think about Stannis. Stannis is a stag man. He is a green man of Baratheon, descended from Durrandon, who becomes Azor Ahai. Beric is Azor Ahai in a Weirwood cave. Jon is a skin changer. So there's lots of clues that Azor Ahai might not have just been, someone who got into the Weirwood net, but a kind of horned god. Now, it could be that he's more of the Baphomet horned god. Because remember, dragons have horns too. And this is why I bring up Baphomet. Like Baphomet, when you look at Eli Lilly's Baphomet, it looks demonic, but parts of it are goat-like and parts of it are dragon-like. So really, this whole horned god thing with the old ones, there may be a convergence between dragon people and old ones and green men, stag people. It's hard to say, and I'm not sure how specific George is ever going to get explaining this to us. But they all come off as horned gods archetypally. So, yeah, I mean, Stannis is literally a demonic green man. And then, like I said, Renly turns into one. So when Robert kills Rhaegar, it's like Robert is actually the figure who is usurping, if you will, what is not his. He is pulling things down from heaven. He is smashing the old order. Rhaegar does a Azor Ahai Night's King when he abducts Lyanna during a cold snap when it snows on King's Landing. All right, so there's a whole brothers fighting thing that needs to be drilled into. David, you've not expanded on your Hinduism series on the Mythic Concepts channel. Please consider it. So I included this comment because I wanted to give an update. I tried to go back to Mythic Concepts a few months ago, and I put a video out on that channel. It got nowhere. And it probably got nowhere because YouTube eventually demonetized my 2 videos on that channel that got really big. Indian Origins and Kali both got over 400,000 views, which is huge, especially for a small channel with only 4 videos. So I thought when I went back to the channel that I would have some success with it. But I did a video. It got no traction. And I started working on another one, but I really had to focus on this channel in order just to pay the bills and keep things moving. I do want to come back to Mythic Concepts. I very much want to give my theory on the Harappan seals and Shiva and all this stuff. And I do have a draft of that script. So it will happen. I might have to start a Patreon for that channel or just get to the point where I'm managing my time better on this channel so I can peel off some time for that. But I have not given up on that by any means. I really want to do that Harappan seals thing. So all right, so that's the bigger batch of good comments. There are some other good ones, but let's pull up the bad ones because there's only 6 and we haven't gotten into it yet. So. And I keep saying bad ones, like I said. They're challenging. They're going to produce... First of all, we appreciate all your comments and all your views. Even if you didn't like the video, I still get the view. And we're going to use these to start discussions. So, Nymeria Sand, to paying the bills. Thank you, Nymeria. Appreciate you. And speaking of... Daniel says, do the Andals have no magic? Nope. No magic. Other religions seem to have magical connections, but not the Faith of the Seven. Were the Andals able to defeat the First Men and the Children of the Forest just by having sharper swords? Yes. Steel. Steel is good. It's better than bronze. It's better than crude iron. It's better than dragon glass. Yeah, that's literally what happened. I think George included the Faith of the Seven because he was raised Catholic and he wants to show the power of belief. It's not all about magic. You know, the Faith of the Seven is really good for explaining archetypes. Like literally, the Septon Maribald explains the concept of archetypes when he says that the smith can also be the cobbler because it's any worker or craftsman. So it's like, and then he's saying, oh yeah, the 7 that are all one, they're different facets. Like that's what archetypes are. They are character types. They are not literal things. So Septon Maribald, he would be a great guest. He gets this stuff. There isn't literally a smith god, but he understands the use of the archetype. It's a way to hold something sacred, to say the role of the mother in society is sacred. The role of the maiden, meaning the young and the innocent, is sacred. The old and elderly and wise, whether that's the crone or the father, these are important and sacred roles, right? So the faith of the seven it's really important that like some people in this world are moved by ideas and not just magic. And it's not only magical things that start cults and religions and have power. So it's just making a world where practical stuff coexists with supernatural. So on the screen is our first comment. This is the Doggerland one. And I'm going to take a quick rip. I'll give you some reading Rhaegar, and then I'll be right back. And we're back. Given that George Martin's Westeros is semi-based on Great Britain and Essos on Europe, I am afraid it is far more likely that the breaking of the Arm of Dorne is semi-based upon the fate of Doggerland. Even the timescales are similarish. Doggerland was inhabited by lots of people and was the easy way for people to move back and forth from Europe to what would become the British Isles. It happened roughly 6 to 300 BCE. The Chicxulub asteroid was far too long ago. Humans wouldn't be around millions and millions of years. And remember, it didn't even break any isthmus or land bridge. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong events versus right place, right time, right events, and right history. Moat Cailin is made, having settled that, we're moving on. Moat Cailin is made of the same stone as the base of the tower in Old Town. And the first men weren't capable of building Moat Cailin, but could build Storm's End in the wall. Tisk tisk. Just silly. All right, so let's going one at a time. So George Martin's Westeros is based on a lot of things, as we know here. Based on Marvel Comics, based on Thundar, based on medieval history, based on folklore from every part of the world. And Tolkien, and Moorcock, and. So we know that anytime you uncover an influence in A Song of Ice and Fire, it's never exclusive. So when I put forward, I talked about two land bridges, actually. I talked about Beringia. I don't know why Beringia is not catching any shells here. Only the Isthmus of Panama catching flack. But yes, when we mention an inspiration, it's never meant to be exclusive. George loves to combine things, in fact. That is his tendency. If he's doing a flaming sword, he's going to look up all the flaming swords from every story he can think of and put a little bit of them in each one. So, Doggerland, sure. Could that be part of the inspiration? Yes. Is Westeros based on Great Britain and Europe? Sort of, yeah. If you turn the map of Westeros on its side, it tracks pretty well to Europe as far as where the peoples are. Like the Dornish are in Spain, the Ironborn are up north where the Vikings should be, the Starks are in Russia. It all kind of makes sense, right? But as we've discussed, there's also a lot of parallels between the Native Americans and the coming of the Europeans and the Children of the Forest and the First Men and the Andals. So these are both influences, and we've talked about the obsidian mirrors and all that stuff, right? So Sure, Doggerland could have been part of it. Here's the thing. Doggerland, not really a thing in the mid 90s when George was writing Game of Thrones. Doggerland was only, that term was only coined in the late 90s after somebody published an important study in 1998. And then the next big thing came out in 2006 and then 2012. So Doggerland has become something that we talk about a lot more now, recently, but not when George was writing the first couple books of the story. Doggerland, it had been discovered, but it was not a thing. It was not something that people talked about a lot. Okay, it is much more. We've learned a lot about it in the last 20 years. It's way bigger than we originally thought. There was more people than we thought. It seems to have been submerged in several sudden instances. And at one point there was an island that was there for several hundred years before that was finally submerged. There's a lot of interesting history there. However, it is not likely to be the main inspiration for the breaking of the Arm of Dorne because A, wasn't in pop culture at that time. B, the Arm of Dorne was broken by a meteor. Doggerland was not. Doggerland doesn't have anything to do with a meteor strike. And the first thing that I brought up, first of all, I used the Isthmus of Panama as an example. I didn't even say that was the inspiration. I just said, as a hypothetical, imagine, because it's a narrow piece of land between two huge continents. So it looks kind of like the Arm of Dorne. So I just said, imagine if you dropped a meteor on the Isthmus of Panama in order so that like North Americans couldn't come to South America or vice versa. And then I pointed out that the dinosaur killer meteor, which is by far the most the famous meteor impact in our history, happened just up the coast on the Yucatan Peninsula. And that is what I said is an inspiration for George's Long Night meteor. I said the Yucatan dinosaur killer would obviously be an inspiration for George's Long Night meteor, assuming I'm right that the Long Night is a meteor fallout event plus magic, right? So when he says wrong time, wrong place, wrong events, like none of that makes sense. Because I'm not, like, if George is being inspired by cataclysms that have happened in real world, there's no reason why he would limit himself to cataclysms that happened approximately 8,000 years ago. He could use Krakatoa, which we found there's a volcanic winter in like 600 AD. There's all kinds of shit that he can pull from. And the dinosaur killer meteor, it's 65 million years ago. So he's like, people wouldn't have been around then to remember. I'm not sure what that has to do with anything. That's the weirdest part of this comment. As if I'm claiming that people remembered the dinosaur meteor and put it in mythology. Like, I don't even understand that. This is like, this comment is kind of a train wreck here. So anyway, sure, Doggerland, but not really. It's like, it's not going to be the main inspiration for the breaking of the Arm of Dorne, and it doesn't have anything to do with meteors, so, which is what I was talking about, the Yucatan Peninsula being an inspiration for. So I did not say the Isthmus of Panama was the inspiration for the breaking of the Arm of Dorne, because the Isthmus of Panama has never been broken. That was just a hypothetical. Now, moving along to the just flat out incorrect part of this comment, Moat Cailin is not made of the same stone as the base of the High Tower in Old Town. Moat Cailin is made of black basalt, which might be oily black stone. We don't know what kind of stone originally was used to make the base of the High Tower. We only know that it is now fused black dragon stone, which means that it has been cooked by dragons and shaped by dragon lords. We don't know if it matters to the dragon lords what kind of stone they start with. It may all come out black and seamless once they're done breathing fire on it. Or it could be that they have to start with a certain kind of stone to make it. But Dragonstone is an entire castle made out of the fused black stone, and it's presumably just made out of the stone that's there. They make fused black stone everywhere. The highways, the walls of Volantis, all the Valyrian cities. It seems like they can probably turn any stone into fused stone. But regardless, the high tower is never identified as basalt. So there's nothing to suggest that Moat Cailin and the base of the high tower are similar, because the base of the high tower is not oily black stone, it's fused. And I'm saying that Moat Cailin might be oily because Theon describes it as oily. It is not fused, it's made of blocks. So other than the black color and the word stone, they're not similar at all. So when I say the first men weren't capable of building Moat Cailin, but could build Storm's End in the wall, again, you're not paying attention to what I'm saying in the script. I said that with a few notable exceptions, such as places associated with Bran the Builder, like Storm's End and the High Tower, the first men built ring forts. So I specifically said that those were exceptions that proved the rule because they were likely to have a magical origin tied to Bran the Builder, maybe the Children of the Forest. There's all kinds of shit that's thrown out with Durran Durrandon. It's obviously a magical castle. The wall is a giant mystery. It's built with magic. It does not reflect the building capabilities of the first men. They did not build ice walls all over the place. It's a singular thing with a unique magical explanation. So no, the first men weren't capable of building Moat Cailin. They weren't capable of building Storm's End either. Storm's End was either built by the Andals recently. Oh, the chat's frozen. Thank you. Storm's End was either built recently by the Andals. That's what the Maesters think. They're probably wrong. Or it was built a long time ago by people with advanced skills that aren't the normal first men. Bran the Builder may have had advanced skills. He may have picked those up from the Great Empire of the Dawn. We don't know. So in short, this comment is a total train wreck, but it was funny. So yes, meteors happened in ancient history, but they won't happen again in the current story. Just burst in my bubble. The long night winter is already happening without any new meteor strikes. Everything that is happening now is more of an echo of that ancient past. Martin isn't going to completely blow up his world and turn a character and magic-driven story into an ecological disaster story from the heavens. So, a couple things going on here. One, when they say the long night's already happened, they clarified in a second comment that they're talking about the Winterfell snowstorm. So this person thinks that the snowstorm that's emanating from Winterfell is the beginning of the long night, and that it's just going to keep spreading and eventually cover the entire northern hemisphere, I guess, and blot out the sun. The thing is, it's not even blotting out the sun in Winterfell. It's just a snowstorm. I do think it might be magical in that it's centered around Winterfell. It might have to do with there not being a Stark in Winterfell. But for the others, for there to be a long night, the sun has to be completely hidden for years, or at least days and weeks, a prolonged period. So we do need something to blot out the sun. Now, I have said that if it's not something as coherent as like meteor smoke, fallout smoke covering the atmosphere, that the only other thing I could think of is a magical snowstorm from the heart of winter, or I guess Winterfell, that just spreads out over the entire northern hemisphere. It would be cool. It's less coherent, but it's interesting, and it could be epic, right? So I'm open to that. But here's the thing. I'm not going to go and sort of do moon meteor theory again here, but like you guys know, there's a lot of evidence that moon meteors happened in the past, or that meteors, falling stars, they're in all the ancient myths, right? So the serious point here that I don't understand is this person says, yeah, they happened in the ancient history, but they won't happen again. See, that makes no sense to me. If Martin has come up with this clever explanation for the long night, that he's then hidden in the story, in the myths, in the symbolism, it's this big mystery. What caused the long night? Oh, it was a meteor strike, okay? And he's walking up to that revelation, and I've figured it out. It's very exciting. He's not going to come up with a different thing to cause a new long night. That makes no sense. if he's come up with a clever thing to cause a long night, he's going to use the same mechanism again. And that's the whole point of hiding it in the past, is so that when we figure out that that's what happened last time, it'll be the last thing that warns us about what's about to happen this time. It just would be really weird for him to come up with moon meteors for the past and then invent a new thing that causes the same effect. Maybe you guys disagree, but that makes no sense to me. And I don't think the long night's already happening with that snowstorm, but I understand that thought. The last sentence, Martin isn't going to completely blow up his world and turn a character and magic-driven story into an ecological disaster story from the heavens. My friend, this already is an ecological disaster story from the gods. That's what this is. Like, the long night is an ecological disaster. It is specifically designed by its disruption of the natural cycles. The cycle of the seasons is stuck on winter. The cycle of death and life, stuck on death. And the cycle of day and night is stuck on night. So it's literally a freezing of all of the natural processes of life and nature. So it's absolutely an ecological disaster story. And the greater themes of everyone messing with magic, Azor High, Night's King, all these hubristic figures, is that they are messing with the forces of nature. Nature is magical in this story, but that's the parallel. It's mankind rising above himself and warring with his natural environment instead of living in harmony with it. So of course, this is an ecological disaster story. The others are ice demons. They are the personifications of the worst parts of winter, and they are coming with stars in their eyes to kill you. So, yeah, think about it like this. I don't think the moon meteors are going to steal the show, in the sense that we all know a new long night is going to fall. In a sense, what triggers it is not really important to the characters. The characters are going to have to deal with the darkness, the chaos, the famine, and then the others. So what set it off, what the cause was, that's not really the thing. Like, that's fun. It's interesting world building, but it's going to happen. And when the new long night falls, it's going to be show stealing. It's going to be incredible. The wall's going to fall. Darkness is going to cover the skies. It's going to be something that hasn't happened in the books yet. That's going to raise the level of magic and make everyone lose their shit. Something like that is coming. We've already seen the red comet hanging in the sky, chapter after chapter, getting description after description. Like, if that thing comes back, and then there's bleeding stars in the sky. I mean, Melisandre says, when the stars bleed and darkness falls heavy on the world, Azor Ahai will be reborn to wake dragons from stone. When the stars bleed. That's a meteor shower. This is a prophecy. So yes, Benero pointed at the moon, made a fist, spread his hand wide. Flames leapt from his fingers with a whoosh. Kaboom! Kablooey! Yes, it's coming. And it will be consistent with everything that's come before. I read this one already. Okay, here's a good one. Let me get a drink. The map of Westeros is shaped in the image of Yggdrasil. The south is an adder's nest. Winterfell is shaped in the image of... let me go back. Winterfell is shaped in the image of Yggdrasil because it has a dragon in the crypts. The prologue offers an image of Yggdrasil, slithery, scarlet, hissing Waymar slashing at the base of the tree. Well, yeah, and obviously Bloodraven, and thank you, I didn't even notice the amount, Jamie, very generous. Jamie Egg, talking about Ig. The serpents under Yggdrasil are important, and they're commented on often in Norse myth. It's not just Nidaugur. There's a whole nest of serpents under there, and that is part of the reason why the weirwood roots are described as serpents and graveworms and things. And Bloodraven is a white serpent down in the root zone. He is Nidhogg. The map of Westeros. The south isn't right. There's snakes in the south. I get what you're saying. It's not literally the shape, but just the fact that everywhere there's a root zone, there's always serpents. Yeah. And of course, Winterfell, there's all these stories about dragons down in the crypts, and we've been talking about that too. So yes, this all is a reference to Nidhogg, for sure. And one of the important things that Nidhogg will be, I believe, set free at Ragnarok, of course. So, will dragons escape from the crypts of Winterfell? Probably just resurrected Jon, but who knows? Joining late, I'm watching about an hour behind, but like the stream, y'all, and become a squisher. Yes, thank you. Who said that? Who's that? Michael Doyle. Thanks, Michael. Do you think the wall is based on the concept of Hadrian's Wall and the wildlings? Yes, George has said that flat out. It's inspired by Hadrian's Wall. He went there and had a moment. Yeah, so, and this is also, we were talking about, wouldn't it be cool if there was, if the Great Empire of the Dawn were the ones who first created the wall, maybe there's a black stone foundation under the ice. And it's like, oh, that would be metaphorical because George built his ice wall on top of Hadrian's Wall, so to speak. And Hadrian's Wall is a stone wall. So if there's a stone wall under the ice wall, that would be a nod to Hadrian's Wall. And it would be like George imagining a future where somebody builds an ice wall on top of Hadrian's Wall, which is what he did. So 1816 was called the year without a summer and was caused by an eruption most of the world didn't know about for years. Could the red comet already have hit Planetos? That's an interesting idea. I don't think so. Because it didn't take 4 years for the smoke to spread. It's just that a lot of people didn't know where the smoke came from a long time because the world wasn't as connected back then. But I believe the smoke would have spread out in a matter of hours or a couple of days at most. So no, I don't think the red comet, it's got to come back. We'll see it in the sky. And remember, Martin originally was going to have a 5-year gap. So it was going to be 8 or 9 years between comet sightings. It'll be less now, but whatever. It can do what it needs to. Oh, I've got another PayPal. Thanks, guys, for keeping the PayPals coming. Appreciate you guys. I knew there was questions stored up in the universe. Short time watcher. We love you. Mainly watching older vids here and there. Wanted to send in a donation to give props to the work. You've opened my mind to all this crazy lore question. How is Dany able to have 3 dragons tamed at once? And will Jon be getting one of them? So this is a show thing. In the show, she's able to sort of command all 3. In the book, she is not. She has a lot of trouble with that. She does seem to be bonding with Drogon. So the other 2 are theoretically available to be bonded with. And no rider has ever ridden more than 1 dragon. That doesn't mean it can't be done. Maybe Dany will be the first. But supposedly no one's ever done it. And we're led to believe that she can only ride Drogon. We will see. I suspect that will be the case. I'm sorry, I didn't mute that one. I tried. It didn't work. There's so many other people that need to ride dragons, though. Jon and Euron and maybe even Tyrion. Throw Fagon on a dragon. Some people want to. What's the eerie music I use in my videos? That's mine. I make it with effects pedals and bass guitar. Okay. So here's somebody attacking my Dawn is the original ice theory. This is one of the hardest theories to attack. It's so simple. I can explain this in like 3 sentences. Do you think the last hero was a Stark? Most people would say yes. He had a dog after all. Do you think Dawn is Lightbringer? Most people would say yes. Do you think the last hero wielded Lightbringer when he ended the long night? Most people would say yes. And that puts Dawn in the hands of a Stark last hero. And so then when you ask where the naming tradition that dates back to the Age of Heroes comes from, the naming tradition of the Starks calling their family swords ice, well, maybe it goes back to the time a Stark used a big white sword. Save the world. That's the theory. That's the beginning of it. Some people find it really far-fetched, which I don't understand. But here we go. Naming swords is very common, not just special Valyrian ones. Okay. I think it is likely that the Kings of Winter just called their swords ice before. I don't think there's anything to link the Starks with the Danes at Starfall, with a sword made of a falling star. So stop right there. I think it's likely the Kings of Winter just called their swords ice. No. Anytime you're looking at an important mystery in A Song of Ice and Fire and going, that doesn't mean anything, that's just a thing. Like, no, you're wrong. It all means something. Everything means something. It all does. Especially the mystery, when he says, oh yeah, it's a tradition that goes back to the Age of Heroes. We don't know how it started. Like, yeah, that's got a freaking answer. So, I don't think there's anything to link the Starks with the Danes at Starfall with a sword made of a falling star. Again, star is in the name Stark. But it all comes down to, do you think the last hero was a Stark, and do you think the last hero had Dawn? That's really all there is to it. But they're older than the Starks. We don't know that. And have almost Valyrian features, yes. Despite predating Valyria, likely they were from the Empire of the Dawn, who also had such features. And so now he starts explaining the Great Empire of the Dawn theory to me, which is cool. That just means my theory has gotten around so much that some people don't know it's mine and have heard it somewhere else and are telling me about it, which is always, it actually is flattering. Let's see, and would have explained how they were able to make Dragonsteel before Valyria, as the Empire of the Dawn had dragons. Having the wielder called the Sword of the Morning wielding Dawn is very much a metaphor for bringing the light. I think Lightbringer is a translation of Dawn. Okay, so he sounds like he thinks Lightbringer is Dawn. Sword of the Morning seems important, and if it's prophesied Azor Ahai will be born again, it would probably be assumed that he would be of the same family line and wield the same sword. Thus, the Sword of the Morning being an analogy to Azor Ahai. Also, Azor Ahai was Eldric's Shadow Chaser, and the current Lord of House Dane is named Edric. Most of the great houses follow a kind of first-name system, e.g. Brand and Bran being a recurring name. The evidence for it originating and staying with House Dane is overwhelming. I find it hard to believe no one made a note of the single most notable sword in Westeros switching hands between the kings in the north and a more minor southern house. Okay. So, it sounds like we think that Lightbringer is the Sword of the Morning, or Lightbringer is Dawn. So I guess they're saying that whoever wielded Lightbringer was not a Stark. So the last hero did not wield Dawn or Lightbringer, I guess is where it breaks down for him. And I just don't see how Lightbringer is Lightbringer if it's not the last hero's Dragonsteel. Feel free to explain that to me, but I don't see how that works. The last hero has a dog, and not only is the last hero a Stark story told to Bran by old Nan, but like Bran and Jon both parallel the last hero. They're both doing the last hero journey beyond the wall. Bran even runs into 12 people who are either dead or gonna die. Like, there's a whole thing about that. So the last hero, I feel like, really has to be a Stark. And the last hero had a sword of Dragonsteel. And if that's not Lightbringer, I just don't know how the story makes sense. And then, as I pointed out, the Elric thing, we find more Elric names in the Stark family tree. There's Elric and Edric. And then all the Eddard names are also variants of that, because Edric Stark is supposedly named after Eddard, or Edric Dane is named after Eddard Stark. So there's a lot to conflate the Starks and Danes. And then, of course, there's the Tower of Joy, where Ned Stark takes Dawn from Arthur Dane and returns it to Starfall. So, did a Stark last hero in the past use Dawn and return it to Starfall? Maybe, because that would be an echo of that. And at the Tower of Joy, it's a fight between Grey Wraiths, Ned and his friends, so they're like Night's Watchmen in black, and they're fighting the Kingsguard, who are symbolized as the others. So it's very much a Night's Watch versus others fight, where Dawn changes hands and is then returned to Starfall afterwards. So I feel like Dawn is the original ice is like the least tinfoil of all my theories. It's super logical. If the last hero was a Stark and he wielded Dawn, that has to be where the naming tradition comes from, because it goes back to the Age of Heroes. And Dawn looks like a stick of ice. It's pale as milk glass. When George describes the bones of the others, the one time we see them, they're pale as milk glass. So, yeah. Then, of course, the 4 times that swords run with morning light, they're always stark swords. It's all in the video. So, you have not taken down my theory. Fail. Oh, I did that one. Oh, I read that one. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. This one. Great Empire of the Dawn video. Someone commented one word, just fan fiction, right? Fan fiction. And so snarky me responded, try reading the Silmarillion. Not only is the Great Empire of the Dawn theory not fan fiction, it's almost a direct copy of Ar-Pharazôn, Tar Miriel, and the Downfall of Numenor. Or go watch Avengers again, whichever. And if you like Avengers, no shame on you. It's fine. I like dumb stuff too. I mean, come on, they're comic book movies. It's dumb stuff. You're allowed to like it, though, is the point. No shame. It's just not the same as Ice. Hope we can agree. Song of Ice and Fire, Marvel movies, slightly different levels of literary complexity. Let's just leave it at that. Okay? So, again, no shame if you like the Marvel movies. But yeah, if you think the Great Empire of the Dawn theory is fan fiction, it just means you haven't read the Silmarillion. And yeah, why does the chat keep freezing today, man? It's brutal. In fact, Tolkien experts, when they take a look at the Great Empire of the Dawn theory, a couple of them have been like, this is almost plagiarism. It's that close. It's really close. So, yeah, the Great Empire of the Dawn. Also, even without the Lord of the Rings parallels, which I did not know when I made the theory holds up well on its own. So, yeah. By the way, he responded to my remark here, lol. So, yeah, lol. Oh, this one. That's right. Let's take some PayPals before I do this. There's 2 more. Jonas says, I believe you've explained this before. If Ghost makes no noise, who called out to Jon when he doubled back and found Ghost? Ah, the silent shout. Yes. It's a very magical thing. It's a sound that only Jon hears that no one else can hear. It's meant to be a psychic communication between Ghost and Jon. That's the only way we can read it. It's not an actual sound. So, I really am wanting to see what George is doing with the silence. You know, is Ghost going to make some sound? Is Jon going to be silent when he's resurrected? You know, obviously Ghost parallels the Weirwoods, and the Weirwoods are silent. And that's part of it. But, yeah. And then we've got Ezra, who says, I was asking why Dany remembers a lemon tree, oh boy, at the House of the Red Door when lemons don't grow in Braavos. So yeah, George actually did say fruit trees do grow in Braavos. They grow in the gardens of the wealthy. There are A, gardens, and B, fruit trees. So, yeah. I don't know. Somebody pointed that out to George, and he said, very perceptive of you. And then he sort of trails off and says that would be telling. So I don't know. I don't really have anything to say about Lemongate, except for that fruit trees do grow in Braavos. So I don't see that the lemon tree is, yeah, I don't know. I'm not even going there. I can't. Because the thing is, to give a real opinion on it, I'd have to read the argument. The very long and exhaustive argument about why she wasn't raised in Braavos or whatever. And I don't really have the patience for that. So I can't respond to the theory and say why exactly this or that doesn't work. But I will just say fruit trees do grow in the gardens of the wealthy in Braavos. And that's where Dany supposedly grew up, is in the manse of somebody wealthy. So. Let's see here. And as far as the latitude goes, citrus can grow in a lot of places. Meyer lemons were discovered in, where's this? In Nepal, in the middle of winter, with snow on them. There you go. Thanks, Carl Karsnark. Thank you. The planet was seeded by a meteor with lemon seeds. Confirmed. All right. Let's do this one. Oh, boy. I'm going to take another rip. Oh, got a cool super chat that just went through. Maesters. Oh, wow, from Jamie again. Jamie. My brother, if there's anything further I can do for you, let me know. Your generosity is overwhelming. I feel like this show of appreciation must have a story behind it. But I'll answer your question. Maesters are the Ratatosk of Yggdrasil. And Ratatosk, those are the little squirrels that run up and down the tree trunk. They supposedly bear enmity between Nidhogg the serpent and the eagle at the top. But they may do more than that. They run messages up and down from the top of the tower to the men below. Catelyn prayed at the top tower when she saw fire and received stigmata from Bran's assassin. In the prologue, Will prayed at the top of the tree when he looked for fire. His prayer was like, yes. Okay, so let me sort this all out. Okay, so the Maesters are called the Grey Rats, and they very much parallel the Children of the Forest. The Children of the Forest are called Squirrel People, right? And this is the reason why they're called Squirrel People is because of Ratatosk. Ratatosk the squirrel lives in Yggdrasil. The Children of the Forest live around and in the Weirwood Caves. They are the handmaids or handmaidens of the Weirwood. They help the Green Seers. They help the Night's Watch. So everybody that's dealing with the Weirwoods interfaces with the children. Okay, so Ratatosk, similar with Yggdrasil. The Maesters, that's why they're called Grey Rats. So that's their parallel symbol. And yes, they are doing a similar type of thing. And that high tower in particular does symbolize a Weirwood. And if you look at the high tower sigil, it's really obvious with the white tower, and it's crowned with the blaze of red fire at the top, just like the Weirwood canopy. Library Tower, that's another one that's a strong Weirwood parallel, because of course Weirwoods are like books, they're like libraries. So the high tower is casting the light of knowledge, and the Weirwoods possess the fire of the gods. So very much parallel. Yes, at the tower top, all kinds of things happen at the tower top. Like in the King Bran series, I broke down the scenes at the top of the tower with Bran. There's Queen's Crown. Then there's the Night Fort scene, which is parallel to Queen's Crown. There's his fall from the tower. And all those things have to do with the Tower Tarot card, which I did a whole stream about. And then when we did the prologue chapter, we should start back reading of the prologue, we talked about Will a bunch. And yes, he absolutely symbolizes a green seer, climbing up the tree, praying to the gods, and then the others come. So it is like he summoned the others against his brother. Yes, that is exactly what happened. That, Jamie, if you have not watched We Should Start Back, you really should check that one out. That's a super heady stream. Probably the headiest one I've ever done, if you will. But thanks for your generosity, and let me know if there's anything else I could do for you. If you're ever in the area, you want to come hang out, like hit me up. Thanks, brother. David Lightbringer, a Tower of Power fan. Of course I'm a Tower of Power fan. Of course. Bass player. So. Gotta respect those 16th notes, man. Damn. Okay. Mr. Super Chat from Spargonaut. Let's go back and get it. Couple of new squishers. Thank you, Hamsterdam and Johnny Kameen. You guys are enjoying the Q&A today, looks like. There we go. If it takes 10 years to train Unsullied, why does 11-year-old Missandei have pre-slavery memories of playing with her Unsullied brothers? Maybe she has memories that don't belong to her? No, I mean, if anything, that would just be sloppy writing by George. But we don't know when. I think it's 5 years to train Unsullied. But I could be wrong. We don't know when they were captured. So yeah, I don't see it. What do you mean by she has memories that don't belong to her? No, I don't see how that makes any sense with the story. This is the kind of thing that George could get sloppy on, potentially, realizing that, like, oh, it needed to have been this. She needs to be 12 or 13 in order to have a memory from when she's 3 or whatever. But I don't know. That's pretty in the weeds. Because he does sometimes forget, like, what color people's eyes are and stuff like that, Yeah, see, I don't have patience. I do like some of Preston Jacobs' theories, but I don't really have patience for his whole Page of Lies stuff. Like, I don't see the point in that anyway. Like, if you can't tell me what the point of the theory is at the beginning, you know what I mean? Like, I don't... Like, Dany's definitely a Targaryen. If you're trying to tell me Dany's not a Targaryen, you're not going to get anywhere with me. She's the Targaryen in the story more than anyone. So, if the whole point of it is to say she's actually a Dane, like, sorry, that's just not... That's a non-starter. Let's see. The well at the Night Fort is literally an inverted tower. A torch is a little bit like a broken flaming sword. Yes, well, the burning brand and the flaming sword come from the same Norse word, brander, which means sword or torch, and that's Bran's name. Bran is the fire of the gods, and the red comet is referred to as a sword and also a burning brand by Aeron Damphair. So yeah, it's all the same. Now, as far as the well at the Night Fort being an inverted tower, that does make sense. Wells are important on their own, though, because Yggdrasil has all the wells. So I wouldn't say that it's just an inverted tower. But, yeah, the whole thing is an up-down staircase. So, yeah, it's just part of the tower that's underground. Because, like, next to the tower is the Weirwood Tree. And the Weirwood Tree is the upwards part of the tower. So, yeah, it's all part of the same system. And that's, again, with Yggdrasil, it has the wells in its root zone. So. Oh, hang on. It's scrolling too fast. Oh, some Purple Lemonade gifting memberships. Thank you, Purple Lemonade. That's dope. Zach Johnson. No relation to Jack Johnson. Do you think there is magic in oaths? I think so, yeah. If so, is there a relationship there with the oaths of the Night's Watchman and the Kingsguard, especially with how they symbolize the others? Well, the Kingsguard oaths were modeled after the Night's Watch oaths. But thinking about the symbolic parallel of the Kingsguard, yes, it does imply that the others are bound by certain oaths as well. I've never thought about that, but you're right. It does imply that. Dope. You guys are keeping me from reading this message, which is fine. It's fine with me. Meteor fell in the Iron Islands, causing... from Arendelle. Fell in the Iron Islands, causing the hammer at the neck. Okay. So I'm going to talk about this all in my Iron Islands videos, but you are proposing that the Sea Stone chair is a meteorite. that fell on the Iron Islands. So first of all, meteors and or comets, when they enter the atmosphere, they very often break apart. Comets especially, but specifically here, we're talking about a broken moon. There's no way it was just one moon meteor. Like, it would have been a shower of moon meteors. Most of them would have burnt up in the atmosphere, but we're definitely looking at a multiple impact scenario. So it's not just the Arm of Dorne. There should be multiple impact sites. And the Iron Islands has always seemed like one of the most likely ones. Like I was saying earlier, I think the oily black stone is stone that is created by meteor impact, but it is not straight meteorite itself. It might as well be for all intents and purposes, but yeah. So I will link some of that together in the Iron Islands video. I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, you're thinking kind of the right way. I think all the oily stone probably originally comes from Ashai. But it could be that anywhere the meteor fell, it created oily stone as well. So that we've got multiple locations of it. Actually, that kind of does make more sense, doesn't it? Now that I think about it. Did the Great Empire of the Dawn Long Night happen before the one in Westeros? No, I assumed them to be the same. And the legends from that carried over when the Great Empire of the Dawn Legacy came to Westeros. No, I don't see evidence for multiple long nights, Kelly Johnson. I would assume that there may have been previous ones, but I don't see clues that we're supposed to think about more than one. Just the one in the past and the one that's coming, you know. It's just a logical extrapolation to assume there's been multiple cycles, but there's no clues that those are different that I know of. Hammer at the neck. The mountains. Yes. Okay. So you're talking about the Hammer of the Waters injuries. The mountain's lance went through Hugh of the Vale Knight's neck in the joust. Jaime's golden sword went through Aerys' neck. Oh, it's much worse than that, Jaime. Check out the mountain versus the viper and the Hammer of the Waters. That's the one where it really happens. These are called the Hammer of the Waters injuries. And sometimes you'll see people take both the arm wound and the neck wound at the same time, which is a major clue that the arm and the neck were both broken at the same time. So Gregor, when he kills the stable boy in that fight, first he chops off his arm and then he chops off his head, like halfway through his head, but it's close enough to the neck. Then in the fight, Gregor himself, he gets wounded in the arm by the sun spear. Oberyn's spear is a sun spear, and the tip of it is coated in black poison that looks like oil. So it's literally an oily black piece of metal that's a sun spear, a spear from the sun, a meteor, a flaming meteor, and he jams it in the arm of the mountain. His name is the Mountain. He sounds like topography. Okay? And his arm is what gets hit with this oily black stone sun spear. So, like, yeah, it's all there. Check out that one. But there's more. Ares Oakhart gets his arm and neck chopped. Instead of a hammer, it's an axe, but it's close enough. So, happens a lot. Arundel is asking if there's a parallel between the Black Numenorians and the Ironborn. And the Black Numenorians, those are the ones that followed Sauron, right? Maybe the Squishers filled the evil religious void in them after the Empire of the Dawn collapsed. When they okay, I see where you're going with that, when they carved the sea stone chair. So I do think there is a lost colony involved here. A great Empire of the Dawn colony that was abandoned and isolated and cut off. I do think that's part of it. And if the Danes and Hightowers are Amethyst Empress loyalists, I would guess that the Ironborn were not founded by such. But that too is something I'm going to try to put together in the Ironborn video. And yes, obviously the people out there were influenced by the Squishers. That's obvious. There's no way. You don't live by the sea and not get influenced by the Squishers in this story. Oh, Kelly Johnson, have you not watched my Pact video? You're saying, then what happened to make the Great Empire of the Dawn collapse because it appears to have preceded the Age of Heroes in Westeros? The Age of Heroes comes after the Long Night. You got to watch my Pact video. That's all wrong. Like, Dawn Age is before the Long Night. Age of Heroes is after the Long Night. I'm very sure about that. It's all about the cultural bottleneck thing. So, like, the Long Night, most people died. All of the religious and cultural institutions would have failed. We're looking at total chaos and anarchy and people fighting for their lives against the others. So the old churches, the old houses, the old kings and queens, they don't have power anymore. It's been years since any of them had any power. The Long Night went on for years, okay? So whoever emerged from the other side of the Long Night, everything starts fresh. So all the great houses that still exist now, they would have all been founded after the Long Night, not before. So the Age of Heroes, when everyone is founding new houses and working with the children, that's all after the Long Night, after the children saved the humans. That's also why the humans switched their religion. This is all in the new video that you haven't watched, Kelly. So watch the Pact and I explain it. It's only one long night. Oh, my mute button's not working. Sorry. Sorry to cough right into the mic there. How do you see the situation in the Riverlands devolving? I'm interested in how the Brotherhood interacts with Nymeria, plus the Vale coming in versus the Lannisters, Cersei fleeing to the Rock, and Fagon. Yeah, it is going to get chaotic. I do think Arya's first Wolfpack action will be to help with the retaking of Riverrun. And I think then she'll come into contact with Stoneheart. That'll be the first thing. So they won't interact with Nymeria. The wolves will just show up when they need to, like the cavalry, and help. Arya's the one coordinating it all. The Vale coming in, I don't know what's going to happen with the Vale, but yeah, they will be leaving the Vale at some point and causing trouble. Probably going to King's Landing. I see the Vale plotline interacting with Fagon and King's Landing and stuff. The Long Night reached everywhere in Westeros and all over the known world, all the way till it was Shy. We've never heard of a place that didn't experience a long night. Cersei fleeing to Casterly Rock is going to be chaotic, but that's less having to do with the Riverlands. I think the main thing there is that Stoneheart is engineering the retaking of Riverrun. And then I don't know how much more needs to happen in the Riverlands. I have not read Ivanhoe. Martin clearly lifts whole parts of it. A tourney with a mystery knight, Normans and Saxons, Andals vs. First Men, a tower just like Queen's Crown. I've not read it. Apologies, DM Collins. I don't even know what it's about at all. But I didn't go to college. May surprise many of you to hear that, but I'm not college educated. Did not get the benefit of a college lit class. Then how do you reconcile, Kelly's asking, how do you reconcile the mythical Bloodstone Emperor Long Night versus the Long Night of the others? They're the same Long Night. I mean, all of my theories about Azor Ahai becoming the Night's King, Azor Ahai is the Bloodstone Emperor. It's all the same person. That's why Euron mimics them all. So, it's all the same. Azor Ahai came to Westeros. So, this all intersects. Like, that's the whole point of the Great Empire of the Dawn theory, is to show you that Azor Ahai is from the east and came to Westeros. The Dragon Lords came to Westeros in ancient day, just as they will again come north to defend the wall. So, this is all the same. Okay, let's get into this bloody comment here. Just like with hung and hanged, it is easy to decide we like something. So that's how the thing is. Because remember, I said that I don't like the proper way. I like to say hung instead of hanged at times, right? And so he's saying that, oh yeah, you can do that with everything. You can just decide what you like. And so he's sort of making a general criticism of my approach. This is one of my least favorite criticisms, and you can see I downvoted it in rage. I think you'd have some even stronger, more watertight theories if you did a pass on them from the ground up, looking for inconsistencies. I always do that. My brain always hunts inconsistencies. Anything that I put on paper has already been hunted for inconsistencies. I mean, this is such an asinine thing to say. Like, no, I just throw things together and then just put it out and never, like, we pour over this stuff over and over, trying to pry it apart and trying to figure out what's correct and what's not. Like, anyway. Also, that's, okay, let me move along. Each one that comes up must be answered, or everything that connects to it is discarded. No, that is not how it works at all. You're talking, so sometimes people apply a overly scientific process to lit analysis, and that is wrong. Lit analysis is not science. It's certainly not an exact science. It is not biology. So when we're trying to put stuff together, we start with the individual pieces. And it's only after years that I can do an iceberg stream and string together the individual theories and show you how they relate to the themes and the greater mysteries of the thing, and how a cohesive story begins to knit itself together about the Dawn Age or whatever. It's not like, what am I trying to say? They don't all fit together at first. Like, if there's something that doesn't make sense, it means you haven't figured it out yet. It doesn't mean you throw everything out. Like, when we started seeing that Azor Ahai was a green seer, for example, I first noticed I noticed Beric sitting in the Weirwood Cave, and I was like, this dude has a flaming sword and he's animated by fire magic. That's very Azor Ahai-like. But he's sitting in a Weirwood nest. And even though he's obviously not a green seer, he's pictured like one. He's half dead. He's corpse-like, one red eye, just like Bloodraven. And he's in a Weirwood nest, in a Weirwood cave. And I was like, well, was Azor Ahai someone that lived in a Weirwood nest or in a Weirwood cave? This doesn't make sense at first. Oh, Azor Ahai is a fire dragon person. The green seers, they're different. What is that? What sense does that make? But here we are years later, and it's like, oh, Nissa is implied as a child of the forest. So when Azor Ahai killed her, he was murdering children of the forest. And so then you look at the Hammer of the Waters story. Oh, somebody murdered children of the forest, and it called down a Hammer of the Waters. It's like Azor Ahai murdered children of the forest and broke the moon. And now it all starts to make sense. Then we found other Azor Ahai characters that also have green seer clues, like Stannis and Jon. And it's like, wow, Azor Ahai really must be associated with the Weirwood net, right? And then it's like, oh, well, if he's murdering Nissa, maybe he's doing blood magic and trying to break in. And then we find all these characters like Waymar who are always invading the woods. And we're like, oh, invading the woods. That's a thematic concept that ties to man's violating nature and the others and all this other stuff. And then it starts to come together. So no, you don't throw it out when there's one inconsistency. It's not a math equation. So many of your theories and explanations are built up on top of each other that while it does all make logical sense, the logic might be your logic and not George's. This is a cheap objection. Instead of naming any one thing that they object to, they're just like, yeah, but maybe not. Maybe you're just hallucinating it. It's like, this does not address any of my arguments, and it's not something you can argue against. And not only that, it's like, you haven't watched very much of my stuff. Okay. How do we know that meteors and dragons are symbolically parallel, and comets, dragons, and flaming swords? Well, the author spells it all out. He looks at the comet and says, it looks like a sword several times. He calls it the dragon's tail. Zarzo and Daxos looks at Dany's dragons and says, they're like a flaming sword over the world. Okay? Like, George spells out all the symbolism. We only use external references to try to explain what George is doing. George is the one who leads this out. Like the River of Time and the weir, he's the one that called the weirwood tree a weir and then described it functioning like a weir, stretching over the River of Time, but not being moved by it and straining people out of the river with its roots, just like a weir does with fish. So, like, no, a garth is the name of a cloister garden inside of a monastery, just like a godswood is. So Garth the Green planted weirwoods. His name is Garth. Like a fish garth is another name for a fish weir. All this stuff, these are not my meanings. So that's why I say, like, give me something specific to work with and we can have a discussion about what we think something means. But no, none of this is my logic. We're all following George's logic. Not only that, thousands and thousands of other people besides me have been putting their eyes on these ideas for years. So it's not like I'm in a room writing on the wall and somebody's opening the door and being like, oh my God, what madness is this? Like in Dark, when you see Stranger Jonas's hotel room, and he's got all the shit pinned everywhere, and you're like, oh, you haven't bathed in a few weeks, have you? Or a few years for that guy. But yeah, we got lots of people all kind of working on this and cross-checking it and making sure it makes sense. So I don't think it's just my ideas. Different groups of people, that historically is the biggest problem with symbology. Different groups of people see the same symbols and get different meanings from them. That's true. And we've talked about how dragons are evil in some cultures and represent knowledge and enlightenment in other cultures, and how George is working with both of those meanings. There are multiple meanings, but those meanings are still established. And George is working with the meanings of the symbols that are established. And a lot of it is universal. Like Venus mythology, the way that Venus appears to rise and fall from the heavens to the earth. All of the mythical figures created by cultures all around the world that are modeled on Venus, they all do ascension and descension stuff. They're going to be different. Some of them might be heroes. Some of them might be villains. Jesus and Lucifer are both referred to as compared to the morning star in the Bible, because Jesus descends from heaven to earth, and Lucifer, according to some versions of some stories, is thrown out of heaven. And so they both look like a falling star, even though the themes are different. So, yes, a lot of meanings of symbols are actually universal. And when there's multiple meanings, they are still established. And they're things that we can talk about and say, yeah, dragons can mean this or they can mean that. They can't mean any old fucking thing, okay? They can mean one of a couple of things, unless George is just making something up new, but he doesn't tend to do that. He tends to work with the established body of symbolic concepts. There's an entire vocabulary of symbolic concepts that it's been developed by mankind for thousands of years. It's not arbitrary. So, worst part of this comment coming up. So, different groups of people see the same symbols and get different meanings from them. They aren't definitive answers. There aren't definitive answers when it comes to symbology. Like I said, yes, there is. There's a range of them, but yes, there are. That doesn't mean any old fucking thing. Unless you're talking about specific groups and times. Okay, so that's fair. That's a fair thing to add. Now, I suspect if you have made any errors, it is from making the symbology monolithic. In your version, everyone everywhere sees the same meaning in the same symbols. And that just isn't remotely true to life. No, this is a horrible misunderstanding of what we're doing. I'm not saying the characters in the story understand any of this shit. This is all stuff for the reader. The symbolic language is monolithic and consistent because it's meant for us. George is working with the same sets of symbols across multiple plot lines to tie it together. So yes, it's cohesive and coherent and consistent. The people in the story aren't they interpret stuff all different. People look at the comet and see different things, right? Theon thinks it's his comet. Somebody else thinks, Joffrey, it's his name day comet. Old Nan says it's dragons. Old Nan is right. But yeah, no, nobody is saying that the people in the story are all drawing the same meanings from stuff. They are not doing that, very obviously. So I don't even know what to say about this comment. It's just wild. That's some wild shit. So there you go. Those were the bad comments. We're done. There's a few more good ones too, but how long have we been going? About an hour and a half. 2.5 hours rather. And I probably need to wrap this up. So I will take last call for questions from you. I probably missed some super chats while I was ranting. Let's go back. Oh, yes. Gamer Pals, with the first line being the theme, Quentin's first line, adventure stank, sums up his entire story. Yes, it does. Quentin's story is a great story within a story. It's very thematic. And that's why we know he's definitely dead, because that's the whole point. Adventure stinks. It's not all glory. That's right. Thanks for making traffic not suck, dude. No problem, Clover Azar. Another from him. Do you think the three gates of Karth might refer to the ancestral memories of crossing the bones? Black stone, gray steel, red sand. Right, there's the stone, steel, and sand road. Maybe. I've struggled with those three gates for a long time. I'm not sure what Martin was getting at there. So I can only say maybe. That kind of makes sense, but it doesn't make me go, oh yeah, that's it. I'm just not really sure. Outside of Bran's POV, Osha mercy kills Lewin up against the Heart Tree in Azor sacrifice fashion. Yes, he does. And that parallels Crescent dying in front of Mel, who looks like a Heart Tree. And Crescent's wearing the stag crown of Patchface. So he's putting on antlers and becoming a tree. Yep. And so Lewin symbolizing a child of the forest there. Yeah, that's like a child of the forest sacrifice in front of the weirwood tree. We need to gather up all the symbolic weirwood sacrifice scenes, like Asha getting knocked unconscious in front of a tree, getting tripped by the roots and stuff. Okay, so we're caught up. Let me get this. There's a PayPal or two. Kelly Johnson's asking, since Garth Greenhand, the Lannisters, and the Ironborn seem to be legacies of the Great Empire of the Dawn, yes. Did they come to Westeros before it collapsed, the Great Empire collapsed, or did they escape in the collapse? Well, that's up to us to guess at, but they didn't all come from after the collapse. It seems like with that Fewstone Fortress, that's a colonization fortress. Like, that was probably built before the Long Night. The Great Empire of the Dawn was probably coming to Westeros for an extended period of time. They established several colonies, it seems, and they built a fortress. They were interacting with the children. So that could have gone on for any period of time until the Long Night happened. But I would guess that probably, like, you know, a few decades to 100 years or so, not too long. I think these, because these legendary founders of the houses who's had descendants, these are people that lived through the Long Night or shortly after. So I would say that the Great Empire of the Dawn started coming to Westeros probably shortly before the Long Night, and then not much after. And I think that having an established colony there, then you're going to get some of the people fleeing the collapse that would come to Westeros because they knew that those colonies were already there. You know what I mean? So that's how I picture it working. Another one from Jamie. Why do children... Oh, yeah. Well, the gods of the children are the weirwood trees, but they talk about the children going into the stone and the rivers and the leaves, the trees. That matches some bastard names of Westeros, but why don't they include sand or snow? I don't know. I mean, I don't know that that's an intended correlation, really. I think that's just a poetic line, meaning that they go into nature. I don't think that's meant to be specific. All right, guys, I am starving hungry. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. And my birds are screaming. So thanks for coming out to this impromptu Q&A. Thanks for all the comments, good and bad. Like I said, they all count and they all fuel the algorithm, and even the bad ones can be fun. So, were Garth and his children immortal? You said Brandon Bloody Blade and Bran the Builder were alive at the same time, but it was the fifth High Tower. Did the Dawn Empire predate them? Yeah, see, we don't know. I think George puts that stuff in there just so that we understand it's not, there's an extended period of development. But yeah, the idea that there's 5 High Towers, that says the Great Empire of the Dawn was there for a period of time developing. Or it could be that that's post Long Night that they start building those towers on top. But all this stuff can get mixed up too. So now, as far as Garth and his children, some of them may be green men and green seers and have longer lifespans. That is possible. Dallas's super chat. Did I miss one? Or is that the last one I got? What Dallas one are we talking about? I don't see it. Okay, but yeah, I gotta go, guys. I gotta eat. So I will see you on Sunday. I'm gonna have something cool for you. I'm not sure what, but don't miss it. Make sure you come. All right, cheers, guys.